Today on
Doomed!
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the show. We are, it's not really an episode of Doomed. I don't really know why I'm playing this theme song. Let me put it lower. I mean, I guess this is the night where we do an episode of Doomed, and I just realized my camera is above the the logo, and you can see me right now, but no big deal. I'm not doing anything. So this isn't really an episode of Doomed, although it is. I mean, I guess. Who knows? Who cares? I'm doing a stream. I'm doing the show. I noticed that Sam Seder did his went on Ethan Klein's show H3H3, and a lot of people have been talking about Ethan Klein and his issues with Hassan, and it's been a major discussion. And Sam went on there just hours ago, and I thought, maybe if this happened yesterday and I was streaming today, I wouldn't watch it. But people are probably searching for it. I did see some clips which I thought I would comment on. I had something to say about it, so I thought let's just watch until we don't want to watch anymore. I think they only spoke for about an hour. That's not terribly long. Yeah, let's do it. Let's watch this. Let's watch this. It should start right away, right into it. They're discussing obviously Israel and Palestine and Gaza and specific things that Ethan has issues with Hassan. I don't really care so much about that. I do think some of this is YouTube drama. But Sam didn't go on there to talk about YouTube drama. So we'll watch and discuss the substantive stuff. What was I gonna say? My opinion on this is basically the issues they actually substantively have difference of opinion on. And because of who they are and their influence, because these are two huge, talking about Ethan Klein and Hassan, two huge streamers. And I think their personal beef, which Ethan Klein clearly has a lot against Hassan. I don't think Hassan has talked about Ethan all that much recently. Maybe when this all first started. I don't know. I don't pay attention to that stuff, but I do know that all the clips I see of in recent days, the past months, they've stopped doing a show together for like what, a year or two now, more than that maybe, I don't know. But the personal stuff I don't care about. So let's start watching.
In any form whatsoever.
Well, Sam, allow me to speak for all Jews, if I may, today.
So I queued it up so that Sam's already on the show. They basically were having some small talk about how Sam tried to reach out to Ethan on Twitter, didn't realize he wasn't on Twitter anymore, and how Hassan had recommended that Ethan talk to Sam Seder because he doesn't listen to Hassan's opinion on Israel and Palestine. So maybe he would listen to someone with a Jewish background who has a bit more, cachet, I guess, whatever the word is, that you would listen to. And, I don't think that really matters generally, but I actually do think for some people it does mean more to hear from a Jewish person on these issues. And that's why I think, organizations like Jewish Voice for Peace are so important. But let's watch.
Please.
No, actually, I mean, that's a total mischaracterization, which is kind of my problem with Hassan, which we can get into if you want. We don't even have to talk about Hassan. But
No.
Basically what I told him was that I was citing polling data that shows that about 70 to 80% of diaspora Jews have some kind of positive feelings towards the state of Israel. And he was disagreeing with me. And I mean, this is available by polls, readily available by Pew Research just last month, showing that, and I don't know if you agree with that or not, I can pull it up, but 72% of diaspora Jews have some type of at least positive feelings about the state of Israel. I was stating that fact to him, and he was saying that I was wrong. And I said,
I I don't know what data he's talking about, but um, I'll disagree with Hassan here. It wouldn't surprise me that it would be true. Um, Honestly, I think that number is surprisingly low. Yeah, so 72, I think he said, percent of diaspora Jews have at least some sort of, positive feeling maybe about Israel. It's not all that surprising. This is uh, a country that implores the Jewish people to come visit on birthright trips so that they get a positive view of Israel. And you could be so tangentially Jewish. Like, that's the thing. Like, for people who don't know, about me too much. I am an ethnically I am Jewish. My father is Jewish, both ethnically and religiously. However, my mother is a Catholic. I was baptized, so I was raised Catholic, but I also partook in a lot of, you know, the Jewish side of my family's things. Like when growing up, we celebrated Hanukkah, and my dad lit, the lights for the candles for his parents for the holidays where you do that, like Yom Kippur. So I have some connection to it. Let's put it this way: when I went to Catholic school as a kid, and I would tell people I was Jewish, I would hear it from them. In the 90s, in the early 90s, this is a Jewish kid doing it at Catholic school. But I qualify because of that background for a birthright trip. I didn't do it. But if I wanted to, back when I was of the age to do it, I could have gone on a birthright trip to Israel for free. So it wouldn't surprise me that that amount of Jewish people, have a positive view of Israel. It was how you were brought up. It's not surprising. Doesn't mean they rubber stamp everything they do.
Who are you to talk about this? I did not say that I only listen to Jewish people, which is a little bit of presumptuous and a little
No,
insane.
I don't think that's not what I took him to say. But yeah, I mean, Hassan is that's irrelevant to me.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I think that I haven't seen that poll. I've seen ones that have said that they have a connection. They feel a connection, either strong or somewhat.
Yeah.
Which is different than positive per se.
So
but regardless, I mean, I think if
I agree. I don't know a poll. I think a connection isn't necessarily positive. So it's possible that 72% number is lower, but I also wouldn't surprise me if a lot of people view that connection in a positive light in some way. But whatever it is, again, none of it's surprising to me. Because none of it means that you rubber stamp everything Israel does or what Israel is doing in Gaza.
I don't know your upbringing at all, but I mean, certainly my upbringing, my Hebrew education was, I would say, 1/3 Holocaust, and I'm older, and so this was in the 70s. 1/3 into the 80s, 1/3 Holocaust, 1/3 Israel, 1/3 Hebrew, Hebrew and Jewish culture. And I certainly feel a strong connection to Israel, but I wouldn't call it positive these days.
Sure.
I guess that's a good example, I guess, right there. I mean, I don't have that same, obviously, I'm not Jewish like Sam is in terms of that. I wasn't raised with a connection to Israel. Israel has no, obviously I understand the situation there. And I do remember, sort of hearing about it as a child, but it wasn't like, there was no connection in the way that I'm sure a lot of children who are brought up Jewish are taught to believe and feel.
I think what the poll attempts to is basically, if you ask Hassan or a lot of people on the left, I think an emotional attachment is the way to describe this. So it's like if you think
I certainly have an emotional attachment, and it's not, but it's not. I wouldn't describe it as positive.
This isn't the one, is it, Dan? There's the one that shows 73% of diaspora Jews. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. Regardless, basically, I want to flesh out my ideas, my thoughts, because I'm being characterized by Hassan and a lot of his cohorts as being, a Zionist, being pro-Israel, being a Israel apologist, being a genocide supporter, being a baby killer, being married to a baby killer, et cetera, right? My wife is Israeli. I don't know if you know that. So basically, I would like to just take the opportunity to explain my ideas, what I think about Israel, and you can tell me what you think, because apparently I will only listen to other Jewish people. So finally, I can speak to someone whose opinion matters to me. So thank you, as the official sanctioned Jewish man, Sam Seder, everybody. 100% Ashkenazi. You ever taken one of those?
I haven't, but I'm quite sure I have some Sephardic Jewish ancestry too. So I would mix.
I am not 100%, but I am Ashkenazi, if anyone was wondering.
Vilnius and Hungary, I think.
Good for you. I think that's always a good thing. My friend, I'm 99.3%, so that's my. That's where my authority comes from.
I'm not 99.3% either. No.
Take your word for it.
So at any rate, let me start here by showing you a little context.
Oh, let me also just say, I got about an hour.
Okay, great. I'll just get into it then.
Perfect. I got about an hour too.
Oh, here it is. Not that it matters, but okay, whatever. So let's start here. Let's start with a little icebreaker here. I know we're both fans of Tim Pool. Okay, let's just enjoy this image together. Tim Pool recently at a wedding, and can you see that?
Did he get married?
Well, I think he's attending a wedding.
Okay.
And he's very formally dressed, except he appears to be wearing a beanie.
I'm aware of his beanie attachment.
Yeah. So I don't know. I thought this was a fine look for our good friend Tim Pool there. Very good.
Nice suit.
Yeah. So well, let me ask you this: what have you kind of like heard about me? Because I mean, I know that your colleagues have an opinion.
I got to be honest with you. I have not heard much. I have, like, the only thing I really saw that came up in any of my mentions on Blue Sky, I'm also on Blue Sky, is just this issue about talking to me, and I had presumed that was it. But I don't, look, from my perspective, I'm not, and I know that there's been, you mentioned in the email that there's been a lot of grief that you have taken, and I know that other people have also taken grief on all sides of this. And the personal aspects of this, and I don't believe that people. I don't actively attempt to deplatform people. I don't think people should do that. I don't think people should be swatted or tried to be fired or whatever, or have CPS sicked on them or any of that. I mean, I just don't think that's appropriate. I mean, I'm more interested in talking about my relationship to Zionism and my perspective on what Israel is doing and what is happening in Gaza. And
I totally agree. Let's just talk about the facts. Let me start by showing you this clip. So I've been actually talking about my feelings on the Israel-Gaza Palestinian dispute situation for a long time. I lived in Israel for 5 years as well when I was with my wife early on. Here's my position right after October 7th. And you can tell me if you have any... if you have any comments on any of my positions here. But this was this was from our episode a few days after October 7th. Yeah. Liars and bad faith weirdos. So here's what I'll say about Israel, okay? Listen, this isn't the first time I've said it. and I'll say it many more times. The cabinet is run by genocidal maniacs, okay? They're led by Netanyahu, who should resign in disgrace and go to prison for being a war criminal, okay? He's made a coalition of the most radically conservative freaks that don't represent, by the way, the majority of Israelis. And they're hell-bent on genocide, frankly, overtly. They've committed tons of war crimes in Gaza, including the killing of children, obviously, because Gaza is one of the most densely populated places in the world. 50% of the residents are under 18, so when you bomb a building, the chances that you're killing children is pretty much 100%. Okay? It's fucking barbaric. It's unacceptable. It's disgusting. I've seen videos, I saw videos of Palestinian dads holding his dead 5-year-old daughter. I mean,
I don't need to watch this part because it just gets a little too emotional. But I mean, so that was my take right after October 7th, and obviously that was coming off the end of me being I'm an Israeli citizen. The morning of October 7th, me and my wife were up at 3 a.m. as families were calling into news stations from their safe houses, people being burned alive with their families being murdered while on the phone with news. So coming off of that emotional shock, right, was this was my reaction. Now, I don't know if there's something Zionist or pro-Israel I said there, but maybe I don't understand.
I mean, I think much of what you said was true. I'm not sure, frankly, if what we've seen Israel do in terms of Gaza is not broadly supported in Israel. I'm not seeing the body politic. I mean, I was doing a lot of interviews with Israeli reporters earlier in 2023 about the protests against what Netanyahu was doing with the judiciary. And there was a question as to whether Israelis would see that this autocracy that Netanyahu was attempting to sort of impose on the country wasn't an extension of what was happening in places like the West Bank and in Gaza in some fashion, and more so the West Bank at that time. And so I think it's hard to make an argument. And look, I would make it's not a perfect analogy as to what's happening in this country, but when you talk about the Israeli population not having a problem with what's going on in Gaza, I don't see a lot of evidence of that. There's certainly, I would imagine, a percentage of Israelis, and I know some of them who think that Israel should stop its assault there, but I don't think I don't see a lot of evidence that a year and a half later, after you said those things, that this is not the character of the vast majority of Israeli society. I mean, I'm not necessarily convinced that they are as aware. I mean, I've talked to people who have reported in the West Bank, and they said they would go from the West Bank into Israel, and the lack of awareness of what was happening in the West Bank by Israelis was shocking to them. So, I can't say if the Israeli population had a full understanding of what was happening in Gaza, that they wouldn't change their mind. But I don't see a lot of evidence of it.
So as you touched on, this was made basically before the war started. And I think that the unfortunate, really tragic outcome of the war is how much it's jaded and radicalized, I think, people in Israel. It's really, I think people in Israel feel isolated. They feel the sentiment in Israel is basically that the world wants, the country to disappear. And obviously that's a much more nuanced conversation. But the feeling there has definitely radicalized a lot.
I mean, the changing opinion around the world on Israel is due to Israel's actions. I mean, they've isolated themselves. That feeling of isolation is self-inflicted. They're absolutely being isolated by the world, even with allies like the United States government. Absolutely, but it's self-inflicted. They did it to themselves. And in terms of what he was saying about civilian support for, I never blame the people of a country for its government's actions. I mean, we know from here in the US how powerless the people sometimes are. I mean, I know and if you're watching this, you likely did not vote for Donald Trump. So you don't support his actions. Like I would feel like it would be unfair if someone, because I was an American, that someone would think that I rubber stamp what my government is currently doing to undocumented immigrants. And not even just undocumented immigrants, our entire border policy in terms of what we're even doing to legal immigrants in this country, and what we're doing to even some U.S. citizens who aren't white. You look to black or brown, especially if you look like someone who's probably from Latin America in some way, Mexico or Central America or South America. You're probably, even if you're a U.S. citizen, you're being profiled, and there's even been stories of people spending days in ICE jail. I don't support that 100%. So I think it would be unfair if someone said I did, just based on me being American. So without a doubt, there are people in Israel who don't agree with its government's actions. But at the same time, I will say poll after poll after poll has shown that unfortunately, it does seem the majority does agree with their country's actions. Again, I would not paint all Israelis with a broad brush, because they exist. Those who disagree with the government and what they're doing, the absolute massacre of innocent people in Gaza. Of course there are, but I liken this a lot to how the United States was after 9/11. People in Israel, or people who defend Israel, Zionists, constantly compare October 7th to September 11th. And I think the idea of doing that is pretty disgusting. It's its own thing. Something else that happened in an entirely different country, but they do that. But I will say that Israel's reaction, the people of Israel's reaction, and their government's reaction is much like how a lot of people in the U.S., the majority in the U.S., felt post 9/11 in those immediate days, weeks, months, and even years. I mean, George Bush had like 90-something% approval rating post 9/11. One of the most hated presidents by the end of his terms had 90-something% approval rating in the early 2000s. People think and do and believe some pretty disgusting things when they're scared, or they feel attacked or frightened. I mean, you had, when I say feel attacked, but we were attacked. Why were people in like fucking like Oklahoma and Montana or wherever fucking acting like they were, in the crosshairs after 9/11? Like, people all over this country were acting insane. And I say this as someone who lives in New York City. I was in sophomore year of high school when 9/11 happened. I could see the smoke visually in person from the window of my school in Queens. So it wasn't even like I was right, there in lower Manhattan. And I and a lot of people of my peers did not have that visceral reaction that people who were in no way, shape, or form in any sort of danger on 9/11 felt and acted out on. I mean, I remember, I think it was like in Arizona or I forget where was the, oh, this has always stuck with me. Yes, it was Arizona. September 15th, 2001. A Sikh American in Mesa, Arizona, was murdered in a hate crime following the September 11th attacks. I'll always remember that. I remember it was right outside of a gas station in Arizona. It stuck with me for all these years. It's not something I found out about, 10 years later. Balbir Singh Sadi, or Sodi, was murdered in a hate crime in Mesa, Arizona because of 9/11. People do stupid ass shit and think stupid ass shit. So, like, the idea that the majority of people in Israel would support what's going on should not be surprising to Ethan or anyone else. Um, it makes complete sense because people are horrible when things like this happen. They need someone to blame. They need a scapegoat. So they blame everybody who has any sort of thing in common with whomever perpetrated whatever attack it was on them or someone around them. So there should be no like argument against the idea that most people in Israel actually do support this, even if there are some that don't. And major props to them, because I remember being a teenager post 9/11, who was not for George W. Bush and the rah rah Siskumba America, we're gonna get you, we're gonna revenge. I was not. I trust me. I was in high school when this was going on. It was not a fun time. I get how it is to be that person, and I remember how lonely it was because there wasn't many of us. Again, the anti-war effort really kicked into full gear and became popular, but years after. That had way more to do with the answer, the response to Iraq, which was also a response to 9/11. George Bush rolled that in and lied to the American people.
Since the war started, it's gotten a lot worse.
And I think I think that gets to it to some extent. I mean, you have this wholesale slaughter. I was looking up. We killed in Iraq. Depending on what numbers you want to look at.
Sam's going to bring it up, I guess.
I think it's safe to say directly hundreds of thousands of people.
Guy.
But even like the number of children that we killed in Iraq, I think has been surpassed by what's happened in Gaza. And I think one of the things that I find shocking is that the sense and look, I experienced this with family members, where the sense that there's a victimization, for instance, let's say on college campus of Jewish students, and I think that to look at what's going on, the totality of what's going on, and to perceive the victims of what's happening here. To be the Israeli citizenry or Jews in this country, I think it just blows my mind. I mean,
well, two people can care about two things at once. Why should people?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, people,
no, absolutely.
people
I
who
agree,
are
but I think,
uninvolved in the war, if they're being like victimized in a separate situation because of their Jewish identity, that's a problem, don't you think?
oh, I do, but
And
I
you can
think
care
that,
about
like,
two things.
I think this is interesting how this is because I do think like but the analogy I do think you can care about two things, and I think you should absolutely be strongly against the genocide in Gaza and be strongly against and fight back against anti-Semitism. Absolutely. Absolutely. And no doubt about it. But the succinct analogy here is if you care about a Israel bombing in Gaza that kills whatever amount of people, regardless, they bomb and you care about that, and then also care about a hate crime perpetuated against a Jewish person for being Jewish. A lot of what we see, though, isn't that. I listen. I'm someone who literally has spent the past like 15 years of my life specifically reporting on the far right and white supremacists and neo Nazis and anti Semites to the point where I'm known in those circles of horrible people, and I've been attacked for my work on exposing them and reporting on them. I would never tell someone who is Jewish that what's happening to them isn't important right now if they are being attacked by a neo-Nazi or an anti. Absolutely not. 100%. We care about that. We address that. We listen to that person and help them out wherever we can. But what they're actually talking about here is how Jewish. I think a great example is recently pro-Zionist people, Jews and non-Jews, went to a college to go listen to Ben Gvir speak. This is someone who's an extremist, a terrorist in his own country, in Israel. But he's a hardcore Zionist. So people protested him and shouted things at the people who went to attend that speech. Like you would anyone going to see the speech of someone you disagree with. That is an incident that would be reported as anti-Semitic behavior. So no, I don't care about people being protested for going to see an extremist speak. And if you going to see that extremist speak means that someone yelled something at you that made you cry, they called you a terrorist, they called you whatever, that wasn't related to you being Jewish. Like if they called you the K word, that's different, but I haven't seen any evidence of that. But if someone's simply belittling you, calling you a piece of shit or whatever for attending that speech, then no, it is not anywhere. I don't care about your crocodile tears because that's what they are. It's not the same as children dying in Gaza, nor is it anywhere near an issue I care about. In fact, whatever the opposite of caring about something is, that's what I care about, the feelings of those people.
You can't be like, oh, these people are ridiculous for caring about anti-Semitism on college campuses because the war's happening. I mean, both we can care about two things.
100%.
And obviously one is way worse, right? One is way worse.
But that's the point. I mean, one is way worse. And what's happening in Gaza?
But who should tolerate being discriminated against based on their identity,
I don't know of anyone who's been discriminated against for being Jewish as it relates to what's happening in Gaza. Of course, there's anti-Semitism in the U.S. I've reported on it for, like I said, a decade and a half. I mean, the stream, doomed for 2 years 3 years, whatever it was, every single episode was dedicated to exposing some sort of far-right white supremacist neo-Nazi organization or influencer or whomever in those worlds. If you can tell me, if you could show me an incident where someone was attacked for simply being Jewish, and then that being belittled in relation to Gaza, then I'm all ears. But I haven't seen a single incident of that happening.
I mean, like, of course,
Well,
who wouldn't react to that?
I don't think that people are. I don't think that people are being victimized. I mean, certainly, listen, anti-Semitism is real. It was real when I was a kid. There was many times I had pennies thrown at me growing up and playing basketball. I mean, there was a lot of. I've experienced anti-Semitism, but put it in the context of like you're a parent, I'm a parent. If my kid is going through something very difficult, it's obviously difficult for me, but it's more difficult for them. And it's a question of prioritizing these things. You can have two thoughts in your head at the same time, but to center oneself or to perceive that one's victimization is sufficient to ignore the
I got to stop you because I don't think I don't know who's doing that.
Well, I mean, I just said, like, you just presented as the Israeli population feels like they're isolated and this and that.
There's two different separate conversations. There's like the American Jewry who's like, I have nothing to do with that place. And then the Israelis, right? So like when you're talking about in
terms of the way that you characterize the Israeli feeling, was that they feel isolated, et cetera, and I can understand that, but to not have the first thought of like we are committing, like you say, genocidal acts, and if people want to call it genocide, I don't, obviously it's got to be. It's a legal term, but I think that it's colloquially speaking, at the very least, it is a genocide. And to not recognize that as the fundamental issue, the first issue, I think is blinkered. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, it's a little gobsmacking to me.
Well, so I do agree with you that obviously in Israel, people. I think the problem, and just to say on a higher level, I agree with you. Like, obviously, the people in Israel compared to like what's on October 7th, they were victims. After everything that's happened, obviously, whatever they've suffered pales in comparison to the mass destruction and like wanton death of civilians in Gaza and what's happening in the West Bank too. Lots of awful stuff. That being said, I think the problem with Israel, just to try to explain what's happening there, because I do agree with you, is just like the media apparatus and the feeling that they have there. It's like there's not a lot of space emotionally and like even the information that they're consuming, I think, that would allow them to have that kind of like self-realization. And like you said, a lot of Israelis don't know what's happening
there
necessarily.
Are some. I mean,
there are some, yeah, of course.
Haaretz, what was it in the fall? You had the publisher of Haaretz, speaking out about what was going on there, and the paper was essentially, a cutout, or there was an attempt by the government to basically shut them down on to some extent. I mean, so.
Well, so what's your explanation why Israelis don't care? It's not that they're evil, right?
Well, I think, look, there's, I'm sure that there is a.
I don't get the idea of evil, like in that sense. Like, what is evil? Like, I don't. Usually, when people discuss evil, they're talking in religious terms. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. Like, I don't care if someone is evil or not, wherever you define it. Like, that's just a cudgel, if you ask me. Like, just the easy word to throw out to rile people up in a religious sense. Honestly, that's why you always see people like Tim Pool, who Ethan Klein threw out there earlier to start off the conversation in like a positive manner with Sam. Tim is always calling Democrats evil, or people who believe in social justice or the LGBTQ community evil. it's just an easy way to pull at people's emotions, especially if your audience is uh very religious. I don't like I don't care. Like this means just a silly thing to even describe someone as. There's much more meaningful words that aren't tied up in that. Honestly, um, here let's keep playing it.
There is a mass, sort of like a failure to deal with trauma. But I think some of it is, frankly, is a racism, and I think how can you explain? How can I explain how I just watched a clip of people at a Trump rally chanting "USA, USA" to watching a video of people being, taken into that prison in El Salvador and having their heads I mean, I don't know how I can explain that. So I don't know how I could explain how the Israelis are able to the extent that they can see what's going on in Gaza, have that reaction. But I know that it's wrong. And I think, some of it undoubtedly is a racism. Some of it is, maybe some type of mass failure to deal with trauma. I mean, I don't know all those things. I think part of it. I think there's some of the makeup of immigrants to Israel over the past several decades. I'm sure all of that enters into it, and I'm not in a position to sort of like be able to psychoanalyze it beyond the sort of vague notions.
Sure.
But
yeah, and I
from
agree.
my perspective, it's gobsmacking, and to me, it has shown. And I never identified myself as a Zionist as a kid, or through the years, and I never identified myself as an anti-Zionist. I don't think I think those it wasn't really until someone heard me articulate my perspective on this that they referred to me as anti-Zionist, and I don't really care one way or another how I'm labeled, but to me it shows a failure of that system of government that Israel has.
I mean, it's a great answer by Sam, and Ethan audibly said he agreed in a number of aspects. I mean, it's true. It's true. There's a number of things that are, and I think another thing that wasn't, I don't think Sam touched on, and maybe he gets to it because he obviously knows, is that there are people who truly have been raised with the belief that this is their land and the Palestinians need to leave. That's simple, even regardless of their race. I mean, a lot of it is based on their race, but in judging, like, in terms of like this having to be a Jewish state, because you hear it all the time when you recommend a solution to the Israel and Palestinian um, you know conflict, in terms of why doesn't Israel just let the Palestinians in? Like, just, let's put aside, let's say that there's no more fighting and attacks, or, the Palestinian people want to peacefully live and be seen as equal in Israel. And you'll hear one of the main positions from Israelis who disagree with that being that they will get too much influence in Israel. They will win too many government seats, and the Jewish people will no longer maintain their power in Israel, which obviously defies the whole idea that Israel is the Middle East's only democracy when that's their reasoning. But you hear it all the time.
And it has failed both.
And to be completely clear, I am against a religious ethno state completely. Everyone's, oh, why can't the Jewish people only have this one little? I don't think any country should exist in a place where there is one group of people who is seen as greater than every other group of people. I don't support Saudi Arabia I don't think the U.S. is a Christian nation. I think one of the things that makes the U.S. so great is that there is no established religion in the eyes of the law. No matter what religion you are, or even if you're a non-believer, you are seen as equal in the eyes of the law. I think that's fantastic. Society isn't like that, but we can't we can't regulate society in that way. But we can our government and we can our laws. There should be no Christian nation, no Muslim nation, no Jewish nation, no Hindu nation, no Buddhist nation. Governments should exist for all the people who live in the country equally.
From a perspective of, what I think some people had as a notion of Zionism in the 19th century, it has been a failure in terms of keeping Jews safe, frankly. It seems to have been a massive failure. And so
I'm not Mephisto says, you do? I want you to show me you protesting Saudi Arabia or asking for it to stop existing. That's really funny because I've done a number of episodes about Saudi Arabia. Explicitly, off the top of my head, I did episodes when the Saudis murdered uh, uh, the New York Times journalist Jamal Khashoggi. I did an entire episode, probably numerous episodes, eviscerating the WWE for having a relationship with Saudi Arabia. And I've explicitly said time and time again that it's amazing how we in this country think of Afghanistan or Iraq or Pakistan and immediately connect the dots or draw lines or that don't exist to 9/11. And we don't, especially our so many of these so many of these corporations and that make tons of money off of Saudi Arabia. No one does it for no one draws the 9/11 to Saudi Arabia line that actually exists. You want to talk about who's responsible for 9/11? It's the Saudis. Yet for some reason this country refuses to acknowledge that. The 9/11 families have said time and time again that that's who they view as responsible for their relatives, their loved ones' deaths. And our country has done little to nothing about that. So, kind of a moot point. You should probably you're trying to make. You probably know a little bit more about who I am before you try to get a gotcha, which isn't a gotcha. Fucking idiot.
I can't operate as someone who lives in Israel, but I can operate as someone who is an American in terms of like what we support, which is why I think we should end all aid. And as a Jew who sees my religion being used as what I perceive as a fig leaf for what Israelis or Zionists are doing, and so that's where I'm coming from with this. That I don't know if there is a psychological state that can justify this. In fact, I don't think there is. And so,
it's just an attempt to understand, not justify. Because it is what it is, right? Like it is the way that it is, and so that's for a reason. And it's just trying to explain it. That's all. I agree with everything you're saying. But actually, one thing I want to pivot to and ask you about.
I just realized, because I looked up the other comments this person made. That same person said, "How do you feel about Emma taking your spot as number 2 over there?" Do you think I'm Matt Leck? I left the Majority Report. I'm Matt Binder. I left the Majority Report, and first of all, Emma didn't even take Matt Leck's spot because Matt Leck was never an on-air commentator. He's a contributor and a producer. I left the Majority Report in 2015, literally 5 years before Emma started working there. What are you talking about? Do you are you confusing me for someone else? Very weird.
That we should cut all aid to Israel?
I think that'd be justifiable. Yeah.
And
Well,
mean,
we're
I think
talking about like
that's good.
military aid and stuff. Yeah, for sure. Israel.
I mean,
Israel
I
can
think we
make their
gotta
own bombs
use
and shit.
Every
If they need, like, they don't need American military. Yeah, I agree with you on that.
I think they do need it to do what they're doing, without a doubt. And
Well, what I mean is they're not entitled to it, to say
No.
more accurately.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think military aid should be cut for sure until.
how, as a Jew, and you know, I mean, obviously you have a different connection to Israel than I do, as you know, through your family and whatnot, and through having lived there. But as a Jew, I take such offense to what is being done ostensibly to protect me and my family and my ancestors and my progeny and all of it. It is. I mean, I think it's. I think the conflation of Zionism and Judaism is both not keeping Jews safe and is wrong at its core. And we can see what it's even doing in the context of this country, the way that it's enabled Trump and to attack universities and to attack law firms and whatever. And so I don't know. And if you agree with that, great. If not, I'm happy to discuss it with you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. And part of the reason why, like, this chasm started between me and, you know, Hassan is very influential. So when he decides that somebody is an enemy of the movement for criticizing him, which is what I perceive happened, then it kind of becomes reality. For example,
why is he's doing this? And I know he's going to do it more. He keeps bringing the conversation back to the conversation in relation to Hassan. This is why, like, I sort of been detached from all this. I don't care. And Sam, I'm sure, says the same thing, because I know he doesn't care. I don't care about it in terms of that. If there's a specific point that you think Hassan gets wrong, and your concern is that he has a large audience, then focus on the point. Whatever the topic is that you want to correct or share your opinion on. Your personal feelings about Hassan are moot.
one of my criticisms of his is him not supporting Kamala Harris. Now, would she have stopped the war and been like a perfect dove? I don't know, but I know she would have been better than Trump. I know that for sure. Trump's posting like this insane Riviera, Gaza, the Riviera with Trump hotels. I mean, that's and like he's sending the 20-pound bombs. He's telling Netanyahu, you have a blank check to do whatever you want. Now, like
I gotta say, I'm really confused as someone who is not super plugged into Ethan Klein. Most of what I know about Ethan Klein is when he had Sam, they talked about it when they first started. I didn't air it because, it's not the point of this video, but they were talking about how last time they saw each other, Sam and Ethan saw each other, was when Ethan brought him on to do the whole Sam Seder, oh no, Sam Seder, what a fucking nightmare, to Steven Crowder. That was very cool, and that was very cool of Ethan Klein to do. That's my knowledge of him. But from this conversation so far, other than him conflating like people who are pro Zionist extremists getting their feelings hurt and conflating those people with with the victims of anti-Semitic attacks. Other than that, what has been his disagreements with either Hassan or Sam's positions on Israel and Gaza? They've not got into it. Or when Sam's brought things like that up, Ethan Klein has agreed, which then only strengthens the belief of some, including mine, that this is more about his personal issues with Hassan than anything else.
It just came out that Biden didn't, did nothing to. I mean, listen, I think.
Well, I'm talking about Kamala.
I suspect that I suspect that she would not have had the same policies as Trump. But at the same time, I think that it was a massive failure, both on a real human level. Like it would have, I think, had she articulated anything even remotely close to what I would hope her difference would have been, I think it would have probably had implications in the election. But I think perhaps even more importantly, it would have maybe
older and
whoops, I don't know where I pressed the wrong thing, but I was going to pause it and go to Goblin Lurker's comment. He's fishing for clips to use to imply
the way that it's a
Sam agrees with him. He's fishing for clips to use to imply Sam agrees with him. But I don't know. It's totally possible, I guess. I guess we'll find out once I find where we left off. But I don't see where Hassan and Sam differ. I'm sure there's some small aspects, but big picture, I don't think there's anything. And I don't think that should be a surprise to Ethan either.
Well, I think, look, there's, I'm sure that there is a,
and like he's sending the 20-pound bombs. He's telling Netanyahu, you have a blank check to do whatever you want. Okay. Now, like,
it just came out that Biden didn't, did nothing to. I mean, listen, I think.
Well, I'm talking about Kamala.
I suspect that I suspect that she would not have had the same policies as Trump. But at the same time, I think that it was a massive failure, both on a real human level. Like it would have, I think, had she articulated anything even remotely close to what I would hope her difference would have been, I think it would have probably had implications in the election. But I think perhaps even more importantly, it would have maybe implicated the behavior of Israel. So, I mean, look, I chose to support Harris because I perceived her as the lesser of two evils. But
yeah, me too. And I think that that's an important distinction to make at a time like this. Yeah,
I can certainly understand how some people were just so repulsed by what was happening that it made it almost impossible for them to vote for Harris. I think,
that he didn't endorse Kamala Harris, and I don't even know if Hassan endorsed her or not openly, in terms of like just saying people should go out and vote for the lesser of two evils. Even I don't know what Hassan said about it, but is that the issue here? I thought it was that Hassan was an anti-Israel, anti-Jewish, anti-Semite. Because certainly not endorsing Kamala doesn't make you anti-Semitic. I don't understand where this conversation is going. I hope I didn't waste my entire night now.
And who's someone who, who's very vocal about being.
Eve, online Klingon says he voted for her on stream. Cole says he voted for Harris on stream, LOL. There you go. Cole Sakura and Eve Klingon says Hassan voted for her on stream. I mean, listen, he didn't say anything before that, okay, but you can't get mad at him if he's going and openly voting for her on stream. Listen, I don't think she lost because Hassan didn't endorse her. I think people give way too much power to influencers and streamers, honestly. And I'm not, and yes, I know Hassan's very popular and can certainly change some people's opinions. But in terms of like their influence, listen, Taylor Swift fucking endorsed her. If Taylor Swift ain't moving the needle, then Hassan ain't moving the needle either. I mean, give me a break. Seriously.
Pro-Palestine, I feel like it's an abdication of responsibility to be like, I'm not voting for Kamala, or I'm not telling you who I voted for. I suspect he voted for Jill Stein personally,
But either way,
there you go. You all just told me he voted on stream for Kamala. Maybe someone can tell Ethan Klein, and maybe the beef will be squashed if that's really what this is about. Somebody let Ethan Klein know that Hassan voted on stream for all of his followers to see, all of his viewers to see, tens of thousands of people. He showed them on stream that he voted for Kamala. And maybe once Ethan is informed of that, we will finally squash the eternal beef between these two streamers. Oh my God.
he hasn't said, and he wouldn't endorse her. Now, like, if you're just like a random protester or whatever, and like you're like, I'm so disgusted, I don't want to vote, that's fine. But if you're like a high-level political streamer, and you know, basically, you have the capacity to weigh like the lesser of two evils and what that means, I feel like it's an abdication of responsibility to not make that call.
I mean, you know, I certainly have been critical of people who, you know, generally don't vote for the lesser of two evils. But I think, you know, and certainly, you know, in the run up to the 2016 election, I certainly that was my perspective. But again, you know, what the Biden administration was doing was so horrific that her inability to signal that there would be any change. You know, I think sometimes you have to take this at face value. And I think there would be certainly, definitely other things. You would not be assaulting the government like Trump is. But, you know, I think probably this is the first election in as long as I've been doing this, and I think it's been 5 elections now. I mean, I'm old. That I couldn't really condemn someone from taking that position.
I gotta take this very important question. Zoe says, "You think Brock Lesnar did steroids?" I mean, I'm sure at some point he probably did some. You know, he did come up in the industry in like the late '90s, early 2000s. I think it was early 2000s. But you know, he could have started training him, but based on his agility and his physique, especially later on, he was just a big, meaty dude. He wasn't like muscles upon muscles. Like he probably was naturally big and maybe took some enhancement at some point in his career, but he wasn't big. He wasn't big because of steroids. He was a big guy naturally in many ways, I think. All right, let's go back to what's important here. Just have to take that wrestling
based upon what we were seeing. I mean,
it's not just some random person. I do, and I'll tell you why. Kamala Harris wanted.
Oh wait, people bringing up that he failed the tests in the UFC. That's possible. That's possible. When he actually had to, I think it's possible he took it in UFC. I forgot about his UFC career. But in terms of like, I'm thinking his later WWE career where he no longer, you know, he was just a big, when he first came in, someone mentioned, right? When he first came in, he was fucking pretty big. But he had more of like the Bruno Sammartino physique later in his career. But what do I know? What do I know?
A ceasefire. She stated that. Trump said, "Finish them." I mean, let's be honest. Like for someone
Biden
like Hassan,
said, "I want a ceasefire."
I'm not voting for Biden. I'm not talking about Biden.
No, I understand, but we found out that Biden, in fact, did nothing to bring that about. So,
well,
like, you know,
you can talk about Biden. I'm talking about Kamala Harris. What she said.
I mean,
well, she's the vice president. I mean, at the end of the day, she doesn't really do that much, right?
No. But I'm talking about the candidate. Biden, as a president, said he wanted a ceasefire. She, as a candidate, said, "I want a ceasefire."
Well, do you not? But even if you're like, I don't know how much I trust them. One's like, "I want a ceasefire," and the other one is like, "Finish them."
Well, listen, I think it was certainly obvious to me that Trump.
Everyone is now bringing up all. There's different kinds of steroids though. Like I'm sure he took some sort of enhancement, but I'm saying he wasn't like one of those guys taking it to be super jacked. But that's not the point of what we're watching. Wrestling always gets me off track. Let's get back onto what's important.
It's going to be worse. But I think, like, if you're trying to get the candidate to show some indication of this, I can understand that. I mean, I wouldn't do it. I would just.
Also, I really don't care about this part of the conversation. The Kamala Harris in the 2024 election, there's nothing about it I care less about right now. Let's get back on the Israel and Palestine focused discussion.
Disagree with it, but
yeah, I get your.
It sucks that Ethan brought this up because it's totally who cares? Who cares? That's not a reason to hate somebody unless they voted for Trump, which Hassan didn't.
Point to, like, ultimately, I understand why people wouldn't want to support them because of what they've seen, and like that, it feels like it feels like
it also shows a tremendous amount of just like electoral malfeasance on her part. I mean, they made an active choice. And I think, you could have put that Palestinian lawmaker from Georgia on stage. They made an active choice to signal to whomever they were signaling that they weren't going to do anything. Now, I happen to believe that she would have been better on this than Trump, but they were making an active choice to do that. I mean, it was really electoral malfeasance on her part, in my opinion.
I'm going to see if I skip 30 seconds if they're still on this topic.
You seem to have conveyed that. Compared to the destruction and everything happening,
I think we're back
the genocide, the loss of life in Gaza, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, that obviously that's way more important. So let me show you an example of something. And again, I know you don't care about the drama. To me, this isn't drama. This is one of the biggest, most influential streamers spreading something that I think is really dangerous. And you can agree or disagree, but it's a short clip, but I'll show it to you. And you tell me what you think.
This will never happen, but in a totally just world, any kind of, regardless of your background, any kind of fucking Zionist tendency should be treated in the same way as being a fucking rabid neo-Nazi. And you shouldn't even let someone be the fucking local dog catcher, as Felix was posting, if they've ever exhibited any sort of like positive feelings about the state of Israel. I'm so serious about this.
Now, by the way, he didn't misspeak. He doubled down on it yesterday. He said, no, I agree. That's what I think. Now, just to recap, he says, anyone that's had positive feelings at any point about the state of Israel is a neo-Nazi that's not fit to be a dog walker.
I didn't hear that part in that clip about any time having a. I think obviously if you were someone who has changed your opinion, which might have been a very positive opinion on Israel, to a more negative one over the years, as you've seen what Israel's actions have been, I think that's a good thing. That you, but what Ethan is alleging, he said I did not hear. Did I mishear it? Let's go back a little bit and hear it one more time.
Show it to you, and you tell me what you think.
This will never happen, but in a totally just world, any kind of, regardless of your background, any kind of fucking Zionist tendency should be treated in the same way as being a fucking rabid neo-Nazi. And you shouldn't even let someone be the fucking local dog catcher, as Felix was posting, if they've ever exhibited any sort of like positive feelings about the state of Israel.
Okay, so he did say ever. I disagree with that. I think if you're someone whose opinion has changed over the years, and there are a lot of, especially young people, like maybe Hassan isn't familiar with this, but like birthright and all of this, there's a huge industry around, getting young Jews pro-Israel propaganda at a very early age. And that's what birthright's all about. And I think there's a lot of people who grow up with this connection that they're taught about to Israel and this belief of their connection to Israel. And so they have positive feelings about it. And as they get older and learn more and educate themselves on the subject without people guiding them in the direction that they want them to be guided in, I think a lot of people open their eyes to it. I think a lot of pro-Palestinian Jewish activists, again, I don't know if it's the majority but I'm sure there's a sizable amount of them who have experience with that themselves. And I've heard from people who feel like they were led astray by their family, by their own parents, and that they used to think Israel was this wonderful place, and then they learned more about the country, and they couldn't believe what they were taught growing up. So I do think Hassan's wrong here. I do think if you've ever had positive feelings about Zionism and the pro-Israel position, but as you learned more about what's the truth and came at it critically and changed those opinions, I think you're 100% someone who I want on my side and to stand alongside with. And I think I disagree with that. Now, I don't know if that was just Hassan talking and, he later might have clarified the position. But from that clip from Ethan, it's a clip from Ethan, I do disagree with that. But, that's not a reason to hate Hassan.
I'm so serious about this.
Now, by the way, he didn't misspeak. He doubled down on it yesterday. He said, no, I agree. That's what I think. Now, just to recap, he says, anyone that's had positive feelings at any point about the state of Israel is a neo-Nazi that's not fit to be a dog walker. Now, to me, that seems like...
Right. Ian Kirk says, dude, this clip is devoid of context. He's clearly reacting to something. Right, I said that. I don't know what came before or after it. I just pointed out that it was clipped from Ethan. But without context, based simply on what Hassan said, if what Ethan's version of events is accurate, I disagree. But I don't think Hassan comes off as someone who's a terrible person. He's not saying something anti-Semitic, because we know in the United States of America that the people with the most pro-Israel position are Christian Zionists. And I'm sorry, but in my opinion, criticizing Joe Biden, one of the most hardcore Zionists in the United States of America, at least, for his support of Israel and what they did post October 7th, especially, criticizing Joe Biden and his views on Israel does not make you anti-Semitic. Joe Biden's a Catholic. I mean, I, especially as someone who was raised Catholic, could criticize Joe Biden. As someone who is ethnically Jewish and raised Catholic, no one has more of a responsibility. And I felt that, honestly. I truly felt that. In fact, I pivoted entirely to this in the, following, October 7th. And I honestly, this is the issue that drained me. And if anyone has noticed me, I stopped streaming every week for a little bit, and I certainly have stopped posting as regularly as I did on social media. This is the one, white supremacists and neo-Nazis and all these guys who would personally come after me. People would edit photos of my family, would dox me, share my personal phone number, email, address, whatever. That isn't the stuff that broke me. It was seeing these videos of children being slaughtered on a regular basis. And then on top of that, U.S. media and the U.S. government, really mainstream world media, and, a lot of governments around the world would defend Israel's supposed right to do that. It's the issue that broke me. And I honestly have not been able to get back to my old self in terms of like my wanting to be online and interact with people as much since all that. It's, honestly, I'm being truthful with you. And I've told people about this on stream before. It's been, it's hard, it's horrible. So, I got a little bit off track there, but let's keep watching.
Extremely dangerous, dehumanizing language about what could arguably be 70% of the Jewish diaspora, and certainly probably people in your family.
I'll tell you,
I just don't think what he said is dehumanizing. It's maybe mean-spirited, but that's not dehumanizing language. He said he doesn't view anyone with those opinions to be worthy of any sort of authority. I don't see how that's... He didn't call them dogs. I don't see how saying what Hassan said is... Again, and I'm someone who, if there's no other context around that, disagrees with him. But I don't find it dehumanizing or cancelable.
There's some hyperbole there, but
that's putting it mildly.
I mean, he says Zionism, and I'll tell you what I think is really...
Sorry, I got to correct you. He says Zionism, and then he says, if you had positive feelings about the state of Israel at any point in your life.
I got to tell you, if you look at what's happening right now, and you have positive feelings about Israel...
He said at any point in your life, Sam. Just to be clear about what he said.
Would I have said at any point in his life, someone's life? But I just think this is such a petty, like the idea that we're going to police. Hold on, let me respond. You want me to respond to this?
No,
I don't. Like I say, I don't care about this. But if you're going to force me to respond to it, what Israel is doing right now is so far beyond the idea that someone says any time in your life or not or whatnot. He's talking about Zionism, and frankly, I think it's very difficult for me to understand how someone could have positive feelings at this time. Now, you want to say in the past and what? Okay.
Yeah.
Like I say, I will grant you at any time in your life that is too broad a step. But wait, let me finish.
Yeah.
But see. You go in and you're making this about anti-Semitism by doing this hopscotch about a poll that people had positive feelings that Jewish people do, and then therefore he is anti-Semitic. And honestly, that type of conflation, I think, is so dangerous and so disingenuous. I mean, I don't want to get too passionate about this, but I will tell you something. I have had a guy who went to my bar mitzvah, my sister's bar mitzvah, my kid's bar mitzvah, sat at Passover with me 3 or 4 times, call my father and ask him if I'm anti-Semitic. Now, this is just one, that is just an example, an illustration of conflating when he's clearly talking about Zionism. Was it hyperbole to say any time in life, whatever? The fact of the matter is this conflation is dangerous for Jews. It is a fig leaf and a way of weaponizing anti-Semitism that has enabled Donald Trump to do the shit he's doing, that has enabled the slaughter of thousands upon thousands of children and women and men, for that matter. It is not keeping Israelis safe. And this type of conflation, Ethan, is what I find far more irresponsible, frankly, than the idea that he said positive any time. I mean, look, you do a show Sam, 4 hours a day. He does a show 5 or, as far as I could tell, 15 hours a day. And to focus in on that one tiny clause.
This is not one tiny clip, Sam. Well, you don't know. This is a totality of behavior.
But you
and by the way,
it's
easy. And I appreciate that you can hand wave it away and say that it doesn't.
No, I'm not hand waving it away.
Well, you kind of are.
I'm saying this
You're saying
conflation.
It doesn't. You're saying actually I'm wrong for caring about it.
No, yes. In fact, I'm saying this conflation is incredibly dangerous. It is disingenuous.
I think it's dangerous
right now,
to ignore what's being described as dehumanizing violent language for American Jews.
I don't see how you are unqualified to be a dog catcher is dehumanizing. It's just not. I think this is the perfect example, actually, of the crocodile tears, honestly, that pro-Zionists portray as being anti-Semitism. Saying someone does not have the ability to carry out a position of authority because they don't have the knowledge or skill or whatever is not dehumanizing language. Again, he did not call them rats or subhuman or anything like that. He said, I don't think you should be in a position of power. And he used the example of even the lowest form of power of dog catcher. That's not dehumanizing language. I don't think Donald Trump should be a dog catcher, let alone president of the United States. Am I being dehumanizing to Donald Trump?
Nothing to do with the
That
war.
is a complete mischaracterization of that.
It's not.
He's
not fit to be a dog walker.
He never says the word Jews.
He says a
Listen, how many members of Kufi have positive feelings towards Israel?
Let me see.
Wait. How many millions of members of Kufi, the Christian organization, have positive feelings for Jews? It is clearly not a function of their Judaism. It is not a function of their Judaism, and so
but it
not
describes most Jews.
I mean, that's another point that I made before, where Joe Biden is probably the most infamous Zionist after October 7th. Rubber stamping everything that Israel did. We now know that the whole idea that the Biden administration, from Israel itself, we now know that the whole idea that the Biden administration was fighting for a ceasefire and trying to stop Israel, we now know that was all bullshit. Israeli politicians have said themselves that thank God the Joe Biden administration was in power during the aftermath of October 7th, because they did not hold our feet to a ceasefire or try to stop us whatsoever. I don't think Joe Biden should be dog catcher. Is that dehumanizing language to Jewish people? Are Irish Catholics Jews now? I just...
No.
Yes, it does, Sam.
It describes most Christian evangelicals, too.
It may do them, too, but it also describes 73% of Jews.
That is not anti-Semitism. That is about
I don't know.
What
do you call it when somebody's discriminating against the vast majority of a racial or religious group, Sam?
I'm sorry. You want to look at evangelical Jews?
I don't care.
Zionists are not a racial group or a religious group. Zionism is not a religion. It's a political ideology.
About evangelical people.
Okay, but I'm talking about the way you're constructing this.
I think I said before I shared my feelings on Saudi Arabia. Does that make me Islamophobic? I mean, there's probably no one that Saudi Arabia is probably hurt more than all the Muslims who they've done who knows what to. This is the part where he gets completely this now I get, where if this is what Ethan believes, then I don't know what to say. How do you get through to this?
So you can say the same thing about Christian evangelicals too. It is not.
And the reason Sam's getting so upset about this is, you could tell, not upset, but he's getting very passionate about it. So you can tell he gave a scenario, a very personal scenario. This is obviously a very personal issue for Sam. He's probably experienced this way more than you or me, let's put it that way. But he's probably experienced this in much the same way that a lot of anti-Zionist Jewish people have, especially pro-Palestinian Jewish activists. They've probably experienced the same things that Sam was sharing before. Some people probably have experienced even worse.
Anti-Semitism. It is not. It just isn't.
Like, taking one example in isolation, which is what we've done here.
Well, you're the one who gave it to me.
Yeah, well,
I don't even want to talk about it.
I disagree with you.
But I'm using your example, and in that instance, that is not anti-Semitism.
Well, I disagree.
Conflation Okay, well, that's our disagreement.
Yeah.
But I think that conflation is incredibly dangerous.
Well, I disagree as well
It's
on that.
dangerous for Jews.
I think
it's dangerous for this society.
I think, frankly, I think it's dangerous to what I perceive as hand waving what's happening here. I know you said you aren't doing
I'm
that.
not hand waving.
You're doing the opposite. You're endorsing
decades of thought about this.
So right, sure. But the point is, you're saying that this is not dangerous. How dare you care about this? I think it's dangerous
No, I'm not saying that at all.
I personally, I mean,
I'm
Jewish
saying
people
the
have a collective memory of trauma,
it as
Sam, and it
anti-Semitism.
starts a certain way. And it starts with people. It starts with dehumanizing language, like saying you're not fit to walk a dog. I mean, what are we doing here?
That is not dehumanizing language. What are you talking? See, this is the thing. This is the crux of the entire thing. This tells you the entirety of not just Ethan Klein's mindset, but every single person who is a Zionist who believes that Jewish people are being treated just as badly as Palestinian people in Gaza are post October 7th, when they bring up how, oh, the rest of the world, they criticize us and they isolate us. This is exactly the whole point, and it's being perfectly laid out here. Saying, I do not think if you hold this opinion, you should be put in a position of authority, even that of a dog catcher, is not dehumanizing language. Set aside the point that Hassan didn't say Jewish people. He said people who spoke positively about Israel, which again, if Ethan's stats are correct, that means there's 30% of Jewish people who do not think about Israel positively, which means that statement could not be used to conflate directly with Jews when there's a whole subsect. 30% is nothing to sneeze at who don't think that way about Israel. It just clearly shows on its face that Ethan's position is disingenuous.
It's irresponsible language.
He's not talking about Jews.
He's talking about 73% of Jewish people.
No, you said that.
No, that's a poll that's readily available.
No, you made that connection. He did not. Because we have millions upon millions of members of Kufi. We have millions upon millions in this country of evangelicals who also believe the same thing.
Does your dad
and
have...
You cannot say it's anti-Semitism.
Could you describe
You cannot say it's anti-Semitism if you're also including millions upon millions, far more Christians than Jews.
That too, the other way around it too. Exactly. If you hear Zionist and think Jewish people, you're the one who has anti-Semitic views. In this country, in the United States, there is no one who is more pro-Zionist than evangelical Christians. The Trump administration is the one who is outlawing any sort of pro-Palestinian speech under the guise of anti-Semitism. Any sort of critical speech against Israel as anti-Semitism. And none of those people in the Trump administration are Jewish.
Would you say that your father, who you mentioned, said something to you, that he's ever in his life had positive feelings about the state of Israel?
I've had positive feelings of Israel.
Well, does your dad have any positive feelings about it now?
I would assume so.
Not in terms of like I support them, but
I've
like
had
I think
positive
Israel...
feelings. I went to Israel on.
Okay, good. Then you're a neo-Nazi, not fit to walk a dog. How do you feel about that?
No, that's you saying that.
That's literally what he said. I'll play it again.
No.
I think like this will never happen, but in a totally just world, any kind of...
See, the amount of time he's spending on this is making it super clear this is just a Hassan thing. What does this have to do with the actual issue in Gaza? Or what does this have to do with even Ethan's position of his concern for anti-Semitism? This is just solely an attack on one single individual that Ethan doesn't like. Do you want? He brought it up to begin with as an example, maybe, of this anti-Semitism he's arguing for. Fair, regardless of whether it's inaccurate or not. That's his example. But now this is super clear, the way he's hyper-focused on just the Hassan aspect. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is pointless. I'm fast forwarding another 30 seconds.
Listen,
he plays around with the term Zionist, right?
You can say that's a wrong thing to say, but he's not talking about Jews. He's talking about people who have exhibited these positive feelings, and that includes millions upon millions of Christians. More Christians.
Okay, well, listen, I don't think they're neo-Nazis, not fit to walk dogs, either. I think it's insane language.
Listen, you don't want to tell me that you have never engaged in hyperbole. You and I both are in this business, and we do that.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I just think that,
listen, you can say it's an inappropriate thing to say. It's an
But knowing Ethan's history, again, I don't have any specific examples because I'm not a huge Ethan Klein fan. But knowing this was a guy who was all about the edginess of the first Trump administration and the early YouTuber audience and the whole you being an edgelord, he without a doubt is engaged in this shit. What the fuck is he talking about? Trying to pull an over the top example out of his hat like he was trying to do there, bro. You without a doubt. If someone is a hardcore H3 fan, I bet they could pull out 10 fucking instances over the past decade where you fucking have said something in the same vein hyperbolically. Give me a break.
Fair thing to say.
I just think Arabs that support Israel aren't fit to walk a dog.
It is not anti-Semitism.
Okay, well, we're at an impasse on this one.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, but anyway, another thing he does is he says Zionist tendencies, and he's someone that plays around with Zionism. He calls me a Zionist, and again, I know we're arguing here about semantics of what Hassan said, but I don't think that you could accurately characterize me as that, as it's used colloquially. You don't know, right? But he's saying Zionist tendencies. What does that mean? What's a Zionist tendency?
I don't know.
Yeah.
You're going to talk to him on Friday. You can ask him what a Zionist tendency is. I suppose I would guess. And, I've looked at polls too, where, people have various different understandings of what Zionism is. But I think it is my guess, and I don't know what he was thinking specifically, but the notion of an ethno-state that engages and it allows whatever in the name of Zionism allows for this mass slaughter, I think is horrific.
Sure, me too.
Okay. I mean, then I think we the three of us agree on that regard.
Yeah, I think another thing is to take it even further. I mean, Hassan pretty much openly supports Hamas.
Let's not talk about Hassan. Let's talk about this.
Sure. I mean, what do you want to ask me?
Well, I mean, if you want to ask me about,
thank God.
Well, let me.
I'm not here to explore.
Yeah. I have a list of things
but if you want to talk about Hamas, I mean, I think. Look.
Well, how do you feel about Hamas?
I mean,
How do you feel about Hamas? A very funny way of putting it, honestly. Yeah, but I don't know why that made me laugh. How do you feel about Hamas?
I feel that Hamas, people can perceive it as a liberation organization. We call them terrorists in this country. We call the ANC terrorists.
What do you think about them, Sam?
Listen, I think there are parts, I would imagine, of Hamas that have done good for the people in Gaza, and I think they have done bad things. But I sort of feel, I guess...
Honestly, in many ways, it's accurate to say that Hamas is like most governments. I mean, the U.S. government carries out terrorism all around the world in the same way I think Hamas engaged with it when it went after innocent civilians. Again, I've shared my feelings about October 7th in terms of I think it would be completely fair game for Hamas to have attacked the Israeli military and even taken Israeli military hostages in exchange for Palestinian hostages. I don't agree with involving innocent civilians. And I think that's where, I think they crossed the line there. But I think the same thing about Israel. I think Israel is a lot of ways much like Hamas. In fact, we know that Israel, especially in Benjamin Netanyahu, supported Hamas, wanted Hamas to be in power in Gaza. They viewed Hamas as good for his administration, for his politics and his ideology in Israel. To have an enemy like Hamas, it was good for him. In fact, they had a relationship with Hamas. They would let Hamas know things. They had contact with Hamas. And there's also plenty of speculation out there about where was the intelligence that on October 7th, and why was Israel not paying attention to what Hamas had planned for October 7th?
Ultimately, probably like Ehud Barak, when he said that were I Palestinian and I was living in Gaza, that it would be likely that I would join Hamas. I mean, that's what Ehud Barak said on multiple occasions. And I think that is very, that is an understanding of human nature.
That you're not affording Israelis, by the way, just to point out an inconsistency there.
How so?
Well, you're like, I refuse to understand human nature and their reaction. It's just evil, and I don't know how to explain it.
I didn't use the word evil.
Right. I'm inferring.
That's what Ethan said, and I had a whole talk about that. Sam didn't say that, and I've explained what I don't think it's you're inherently, like, using Ethan's words, evil. I think it's human nature for, sadly, a lot of people to have something happen to them, and in response, they want revenge and blood, and they feel hatred, and they think it's justified. And I think that's scary, and unfortunately, I think that's a lot of people, and it's very much what the United States and its people was like after 9/11.
Because I asked you if you think they're evil, and you didn't really answer that.
Listen, I don't know what Gazans felt on October 8th, but toward Hamas. But I can tell you that we have
Sam is absolutely right that they're seen as a liberation, a freedom, like a liberation movement, because there are people who view them as that, because that's what they are to them. If you're in Gaza, if you live in Gaza, if you're a Gazan, if you're a young kid in Gaza, and your whole life, all you've known is this death and destruction, and the only people you see fighting back ostensibly for you and your people is Hamas. You see the people who are hurting you, the IDF, and the only people who are pushing back is this group called Hamas. Of course, you're going to have a positive feeling about Hamas. Of course, you're going to see them in a positive light. They're all you know as someone who's fighting for you. And it's the same thing that anyone with half a brain is called, that when Israel is doing what it's doing in Gaza, that there's that great tweet about how if I think it was from Crane T. Nelson. Maybe it wasn't him, but it was I think it was from him on Twitter. And it was something along I'm paraphrasing here, but the quote was, if I was in Gaza and I saw Israel kill my family in order to destroy Hamas, then the first thing I would do is create Hamas too. That's exactly what's going on. That is the dynamic, whether you like it or not. Facts don't care about your feelings.
There is a long history of terrorist organizations, or so-called terrorist organizations, like the ANC or the IRA, even the PLO,
now, Sam,
that ultimately become a political organization.
I think the comparison to Hamas
Hamas is also a political organization, though, as Sam is pointing out. Israel was dealing with Hamas.
To what happened in South Africa is insane.
And I think that's a lot of the bizarre, like, the bizarreness, and we saw this a lot over the past couple of years of comparing Hamas to ISIS or Al Qaeda. It just simply isn't. It isn't. As much as you want to view them as equivalent to ISIS because it would make like your messaging easier for you, it's just not. There is an ideology behind it that isn't anything involving ISIS. It's a political ideology. It's an ideology that is about its own nationality and nation state and its search for one. It's just not. And they would love to equate it with that because it makes things so much easier for them. When in reality, it's not that. It's actually much simpler. It's much simpler, and that is the Palestinian people want the ability to live as a sovereign nation in their own land and not live under Israel's forces, under Israel occupation, and have a foreign nation rule over them where they have no voice, no vote, no say.
Insanely disingenuous. And I personally hate when people do that.
I mean, Mandela didn't think so.
Well, Mandela did think so. He explicitly stated that he avoided committing violence on the citizenry because it would make reunification impossible. That's something he said.
I think you could say that tactically speaking, listen,
in the totality, by the way, Sam, in the totality of their campaign, I think under 200 civilians died. And the people who did kill civilians were almost all held accountable for what they did. That's a difference, Sam.
Well, I mean, I can tell you that
a significant difference.
Well, it is a significant difference. I mean, I imagine many of those people who committed atrocities on October 7th are dead now. And, you know, so
what does that have to do with anything?
Well, that's accountability.
Being killed? Okay. But I mean, being held accountable by the party that they're presumably doing the violence on.
How would that not have to do with anything? I mean, this is kind of they're going off the topic, but how would that not have to do with anything? If the people who did the thing to you, if those specific individuals have been killed, then how would that not mean anything? I mean, that just backs up the idea that Israel just wants to wipe out the Palestinian people as punishment for something that the vast majority of Palestinians had no involvement with.
On behalf. Like,
well, you're saying the entire ANC was held accountable?
No, I was saying Nelson Mandela's party, if someone killed a civilian, they would hold them accountable. They would charge them. They would disavow their actions.
The ANC did?
Yes.
Well, the IRA was bombing places in England and throughout Ireland. I mean, we have even the Irgun or the Stern Gang when they killed, over 100 villagers in 1948. I mean, the history is full of example of organizations that commit terrorist acts.
Well,
now, I will tell you,
people look at South Africa.
I do not condone the killing of civilians, which is why obviously I'm upset about what Israel is doing.
Sure. The part that I don't like about people say, I feel like people sweep for Hamas by saying, like, what do you expect, right? But the truth is that people use South Africa as an example, but what South Africa shows is that you don't need to commit a violent war against civilians to liberate yourself.
Well, I mean, listen, we had for a year.
I know this exists.
We had the Great March of Return,
because I've seen it before. Ethan keeps bringing up Nelson Mandela and his views on nonviolence, which isn't entirely accurate. But in terms of Nelson Mandela speaking on this specific issue, we have what his feelings are on video. Hold on, let me move to a new scene here so I don't lose my place here. But we have this. We know what Nelson Mandela's opinion is on this. Listen.
Choose peace rather than confrontation.
I want to make sure you hear this. Hold on.
Choose peace rather than confrontation.
Choose peace rather than confrontation.
Except in cases where we cannot proceed.
Except in cases where we cannot proceed.
Where we cannot move forward. Then, if the only alternative is violence, we will use violence.
When the only alternative is violence, then we will use violence. This is directly.
His comments won him a.
This is. Look who he's speaking to. This is directly against what Ethan Klein is claiming. Ethan Klein doesn't know what he's talking about. This is literally Nelson Mandela speaking on Israel-Palestine in front of Yasser Arafat. I believe the year is 1999, I want to say. I mean, he just doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm sorry. And it's very disrespectful, in my opinion, to use Nelson Mandela's words against Nelson Mandela.
Sinwar himself was involved in that. There was Palestinians marching on a regular basis over the course of the year. I don't know how many it was, 50 or whatever, that were innocent people who went there, and snipers are shooting down unarmed civilians. And so, time and time again, and over the course of the 20 years that I've been professionally, covering this, my attitude towards Israel's willingness to have peace has changed, and my understanding of it has changed. And I can only imagine how more intense that feeling is to be living in a place that is, functionally like, the Warsaw Ghetto, insofar as like you don't have access to resources, you have 50% unemployment, the apartheid that is taking place in terms of the West Bank. I mean,
I agree with those characterizations, by the way, Sam. Just to say,
but I can't imagine that my response wouldn't be to pick up a weapon.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know.
It's not really working out.
Well, none of it's working out, is it? I mean,
not much at all. Not really much at all.
What is called the greatest attack on Israelis in 75 years. The notion of Zionism and the way that Israel is organized as a society is not protecting Jews.
Well,
it's not protecting Israelis. It's not protecting Jews worldwide. It is, there may have been a time where Zionism had and there were certainly proponents of Zionism in the early 20th century, in the late, perhaps late 19th century, where there was a notion of a multi-ethnic democracy that fell by the wayside. Folks like Hannah Arendt and Einstein, left the Zionist Congress, and what it has evolved into is, I think, a nightmare for everyone involved. And so, I don't know how I would react in that type of immiseration, frankly.
Well, can I ask you?
But again, Ehud Barak said that he would pick up a weapon were he one of them, and
that's fine.
He's far closer to the conflict than I am.
I'm not saying I don't understand why people pick up weapons, right? So let me ask you this: what do you think about October 7th attack?
What do I think about it?
Yeah,
I mean, it was horrific.
Mm-hmm. And this was like a military action by Hamas to what end?
I mean, I suspect. I mean, I don't know what the strategy was. I mean, they attacked 2 military bases. I don't know if they were aware of that the dance.
The Nova rave.
Yeah, I don't know if they knew that rave was happening.
I believe I've seen reporting that they did not know it was going to be there. I'm not saying, it's okay for them to have attacked it, but it's just, I believe it has been as part of the historical record. They were unaware that rave was happening. Because remember, that rave was moved there, weirdly enough. I think this whole situation is bizarre, honestly. The rave was moved there from another location at the okay of whatever security clearance they needed to go through, the rave had to go through Israel. Again, I don't know, but there's a lot of things that don't add up to how this played out in terms of if you're Israel and you apparently have the best intelligence operation in the entire world, how this Hamas plan, which includes literal fucking Hamas fighters in air gliders, slowly descending down to the floor, like to the ground. I don't get how they didn't know about something. Either it is the biggest fucking failure in the history of like modern military capabilities, or that they know more or knew more than they're letting on.
I suspect it was to derail the Abraham Accords, which were going to leave the Palestinians out of the.
They were asking for it, right? What the YNGWZ? The people who actually felt, like the people, the attendees of the rave or whatever, who actually felt whatever the actual pain that was caused by what happened that day, they have no idea. What do you mean they were asking for it? I'm talking about clearly Netanyahu would do anything. We know he would do anything. We admitted that the reason he kept the Israeli hostages in Gaza for as long as he did was because it was politically beneficial to him to do that. You think the idea that he would turn a blind eye to something that would help him politically, an attack on people, you don't think he would turn a blind eye? You think that'd be ludicrous? Doesn't mean the innocent people who felt the brunt of the attack were asking for it. That's ludicrous. You're a moron. It shows me you have no ability to critically think about issues.
Equation where an authoritarian
you leave out that they
state.
attacked kibbutzim, by the way.
Charles says, how does implying false flag not incite anti-Semitism? Because the Israeli government is a government just like any other. The idea that you can't criticize the Israeli government would criticizing would talking about the U.S.'s knowledge of 9/11 and how the Bush administration knew more about what they were letting on, would that incite the same reaction from you? Or can we not talk about the Israeli government that way because of some special reason? The Israeli government is in no way, shape, or form better than any government out there. Any single one of them are capable. And I'm not claiming they planned the attacks, just like I don't think the Bush administration planned the attacks. I'm saying they simply knew more, and through sheer ineptitude or for political reasons, for political benefits, they let things play out. I have no idea which is the case. Like I said, and it wouldn't surprise me either if it was just the biggest fucking failure of a supposedly the most powerful intelligence agency in the entire world. Wouldn't surprise me if that was the case either. I'm not someone who's saying, oh, it has to be an inside. We know this with governments do this stuff. Ludicrous.
No, yes, of course they did. But I'm saying that they, I don't know what the strategy was on their
okay.
part.
So what do you think, like, would you expect the response of Israel would be to that?
I had no doubt on that day that Israel was going to respond.
Go insane.
I mean,
yeah, right. It was going to be horrific. We all knew.
Yes, but I think I think the lack of proportionality was just beyond.
Listen, I believe it doesn't change anything because Hamas still murdered those people, honestly. I mean, I fully believe that I'm sure Hamas did murder a lot of those people. Potentially, makes obvious sense. People were killed by Hamas. But we also do know that the directive from the Israeli government and the Israeli military was called the Hannibal Directive. They were also responsible for killing those people. They opened fire on their own citizens. I mean, this is all known now. Like, this is stuff that has been reported out by mainstream news organizations, not like little conspiratorial outlets or whatever you want to argue. We know these things. So if you believe that Hamas is wrong, then you also have to believe that Israel was wrong. I mean, but we don't, right? When we're talking about your position, you think Israel is the innocent party here, and they have to defend themselves in this way by massacring not only innocent Palestinians, but their own innocent civilians. And I fully believe that people in Israel who were just non-military were innocent civilians. I think, even though I disagree with their position and I disagree with the idea of, like, I think, like, even if this attack didn't happen, the idea that you would hold a rave right outside of Gaza in the way they did is sort of gross. Sounds like a bad idea. I also think that the innocent civilians do not understand this stuff. Most people in the United States of America are quite honestly completely and utterly clueless about the context of certain things. They just don't know what's going on. I'm not saying they're stupid. It's just not their forte. That's not what they're engaged in. They have lives. They're experts in other areas. They go to work. They are engaged with their job for 8, 12, who knows how many hours a day. They don't have time to take heed to world events or what's going on and understand the levity of every single position that they put themselves in and what it can mean to certain people here or certain people there. I do think that those people are innocent civilians, innocent people in the matter too, regardless of whatever you think of how tasteful what they were doing was. Just how I view it.
Frankly, and I was aware that this was going to be a horror show, but I don't think I had the level of awareness of what they would do to go in and literally level it, destroy what is it, 80?
I think Sam was right and wrong here. I do think no one could have imagined just how far they would go and how bad it would be. I think it's well beyond what most people even thought. Maybe there were a few people out there who called the complete and utterly destruction and genocide of the people of Gaza and all of Gaza and with the society and structures that were built and existed there. But I do think, and this is not saying Hamas didn't know. I think Hamas knew too. I do think they thought they were going to get more help from Hezbollah, and that there was going to be more of a multi-front sort of attack, and that didn't come to fruition. And I think they were unprepared for that. We also know that Hezbollah and other groups were sort of like surprised and taken back by what Hamas did, or at least when it did it. They were sort of unprepared for what Hamas did as well, from my understanding of reading reports. But I also do think, like, Hamas has clearly been very successful. They've been, like, undoubtedly you have to remember, Hamas's goal is not, and it's simply not to protect the lives of the people of Gaza. Their number one goal is to liberate Gaza by any means necessary. And there is no doubt they have done a lot to get to that goal, whether you like it or not. It's just this is the truth. Before October 7th, the plight of the Palestinian people and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict was largely a footnote, an afterthought. No one was talking about that before October 7th anymore. I mean, the Trump administration went ahead and made deals and moved the embassy and did all these things with Israel and other states in the Middle East without the Palestinian involvement whatsoever. The Palestinians were basically non-existent to the Trump administration in that first term. Hamas had with that October 7th attack, with that one day, forced Israel to do what they did, and in turn put the conflict back in the forefront of the conversation around the world, turned the world against Israel because of Israel's own actions, and has garnered more support for the Palestinian people than there was prior to October 7th. In every measurable sort of way, in terms of doing what they could do to liberate and have a free Palestine. I mean, in their opinion, I'm pretty sure they would say they are already victorious. I mean, again, like, they are fine with people dying for the cause. I mean, that's been the situation with liberation causes and freedom fighters or whomever all over throughout history. So however you view it, like, that's just the facts. Like, they have absolutely turned things around in their favor. And I gotta say, the fact that Hamas still exists and apparently still have sizable forces and are still holding hostages, when you see what Israel has done to Gaza, is quite frankly astonishing. Like, where the hell are they doing? Where the hell are they pulling this off? It is insane. One of the world's most powerful militaries, backed by the world's most powerful military, cannot stop this relatively small group of fighters without any formal military or military training, without any formal weaponry, and they're holding hostages alive. It's insanity that they're doing it. I mean, this is just, Hamas without a doubt views this as going in their favor. I'm sorry. I'm not saying the end game of a free Palestine is within reach. I'm just saying the things have never been so much in their favor. You could just see it in the polling. I mean, the fact that there was that recent poll where something like over the majority of young people in the United States have negative views of Israel. I mean, I'm just telling it how it is. I'm not even sharing an opinion here. These are the facts.
90% of the structures in Palestine, bomb hospitals, that they would use.
Well, Hamas did know that because that's why they attacked.
Food as a weapon.
I'm more interested in like the justification for what they're doing.
Probably took hostages with the idea that they would be able to negotiate.
I understand why they took hostages. I don't understand why they took children and elderly.
I believe that they probably. I mean, this is all conjecture on my part. That they would be able to trade them as a way to inhibit Israel's doing what they're doing, and I don't know if they could have even imagined that. I'm not going I'm not going to endorse Hamas's strategy here.
Well, I'm just trying to flesh it out here because this is what I'm getting to is Hamas. I think they knew that this was the reaction that would happen. You know?
Nike Man says Israel is literally in the strongest position it has ever been at this point. That is just completely false. They've completely lost worldwide support, and not just among people, among governments across the world. The fucking leaders of Israel have fucking warrants out for their arrest by the International Criminal Court. Israel has never been more isolated. And even aside from all that, the internal fragility of the country, it has never been more fragile. The internal fights and strife in that country because of what has happened. Because the Netanyahu regime's failure to secure the hostages. The idea that they've never been in a this is Israel at, again, you want to talk about decades and decades and decades ago? I don't fucking, off the top of my head without looking into it, I don't fucking know. But in terms of modern times, Israel has never been weaker. It's lost its standing in the entire around the globe. It's done. It's never coming back. Look at young people's view of Israel. It's only going to get worse from here for Israel. I'm not saying Israel is going to cease to exist at some point. Who knows what's going to happen with that? I have no idea. It's certainly not about to cease to exist anytime soon. But in terms of its standing and the support provided to Israel, and this is what Israel's been told by people who know, by Zionist politicians and funders and like AIPAC types. They've been warning Israel that this is it. Now is the time to do this stuff because the support's not going to be there in the coming years. This is the last hurrah. This has been reported. I'm not just shooting off the hip. This is known stuff.
Can't imagine that they assumed that there would be this level of destruction.
I mean, that's why they hate Israel. I don't think they underestimate how violent the IDF can be. You know what I mean? That's why they attacked.
I certainly underestimated that they would go this far. Use
I didn't think they'd go this far, but
bomb hospitals and shoot EMTs and have rules of engagement like this. I mean, and I think Hamas is certainly up to criticism for their strategy here.
If that's an understatement.
Well, I mean, if that's the
well, I mean, they're a terrorist organization that intentionally antagonized like the IDF to come mass slaughter their civilians.
Oh, that's where he's completely gone. Oh, Israel has no agency here. We were antagonized into slaughtering tens of thousands of innocent men, women, and children. Ooh, I was dealing with this. easily one of, if not the most disgusting thing I've heard in this entire conversation so far. The most moral army in the world was antagonized. They have no agency. You forced my hand to do this. Disgusting. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. What do you say to that? What do you say to that?
I think that if they overestimated whether Israel cared about the hostages, without a doubt. I mean, there's I don't know that there would be anybody who would make a case that this is what was their plan have Israel respond in this way. That's absurd.
Well, and the same is true of, like, I guess Israelis feel the same way. Like, it was totally unprecedented. You know what happened. So maybe they didn't think that their mission would be as successful as it was. On the other hand,
I have no doubt that they did not think that they would that they would have been able to overrun that. I mean, I think we were told that the technology of Israel's fence, et cetera, was perfect and something we should emulate in this country. I mean, Trump was all talking about that. So I have no doubt that Hamas overestimated
or overestimated the IDF. Yeah, I got you.
What they would be able to, what kind of destruction they would wreak, and they underestimated the violence that Israel would perpetrate on Gaza. I don't know that anyone could have imagined that Israel would have engaged in this level of destruction and immiseration and bombing churches and bombing hospitals and blowing up universities and destroying the infrastructure. I mean, it's almost beyond belief.
So one thing that when I was talking to Hassan, and I'm just going to talk about his point. This is about him personally. When I asked him, because this is obviously the $1 million question, right? By the way, just there's not one public bomb shelter in Gaza.
There's not one public bomb shelter in Gaza?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
What? What is his point here? What a weird segue, but clearly he segued like that because he thought he had some sort of gotcha point. But I'm struggling to even understand what. It seems like Sam doesn't even understand either. What is the relevance here? What does that even mean? I don't understand what he's saying. Does anyone know what he's? Someone says Hasbro talking points, but what is the talking point here? I don't even understand. Jetpack McQuack over on Twitch says, and he's guessing here, obviously, or he or she or they are guessing here. Israel needs bomb shelters because of all the Palestinian missiles. Palestinians, ellipses, do not, question mark. Is that his point? Is his point to deny that Palestinians are attacked because they don't have bomb shelters? Is he claiming that Israel has never killed or attacked Palestinian people? And that a lack of bomb shelters is the proof of that? I don't let's see if he does he
think that's interesting. It's pretty fucked up, don't you think?
You think that's pretty fucked? I'm truly not following here. David 83151 over on YouTube says, "Is Matt only reading Twitch?" No, I'm reading YouTube as well. In fact, I think that was the first or second Twitch person. I've mostly read YouTubers. I'm not reading through all the comments. There's way too many comments. I'm just if I happen to catch something that I think is interesting or catches my eye, then I read it. But I really don't understand what his point is here, and I would like to know because I'd like to address the point that he's making, and I don't know what that point is. But he thinks he has something here, and I don't even know what he thinks he has.
Do I think it's fucked up?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I understand the point. Like,
Well, I mean, you have.
What is the purpose of bomb shelters when you are lacking the ability and infrastructure to actually have bomb shelters? Who would go in these hypothetical bomb shelters? Are you suggesting they build a bomb shelter for 2 million people? Because that's who's under attack here. 2 million people. It's not like, oh, you build a bomb shelter in areas most likely to, be in the path of a missile or something. Like, we're talking about the entirety of Gaza. How would you go about building a bomb shelter for 2 million people? I'm not following.
Think anything would be standing anymore?
Well, bomb shelters are underground. I mean, they would definitely be a lot safer.
I've seen what happened to tunnels under hospitals.
Your statement is, there was. So you say there were tunnels under hospitals.
Israel built the ones under the first one that.
Oh, I've already discussed this. This is what he's saying is Hamas doesn't care about. I think a few people are claiming this in the chat. He's saying that Hamas doesn't care about the people of Gaza. I mean, I've already addressed that situation. If do they care about saving the life of every single individual Gazan? No, that's not they're fighting for a cause. And that cause requires, essentially, it's just by definition of what needs to be done, or what they believe needs to be done, requires people are going to, as a result, die. That's indisputable. I mean, we know that Israel made this calculation too. Israel made the calculation that some Israeli people, hostages, or people who are in the areas, the rave, the kibbutzes, that some of those people had to die. I don't understand how that's a gotcha. We know that. I've already explained how the goal of Hamas is to liberate the Palestinian people and have a free Palestine. That essentially is going to require people die. This is like a known part of literally any and all similar sort of goals or movements or what have you. Ren says he's saying Hamas knew Israel would genocide them and it was all part of Hamas's plan. I've already discussed this. Whether Hamas knew how far Israel would go or not, I have no idea, but they definitely knew that the response to their attack would be many, 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 many times worse. This isn't what would be to dispute here. Hamas knew this would be something. Does Ian think this is a shocking thing? YNGWZ. I keep reading this person's because they keep getting my attention with their comments, which aren't very good. Do you think they should have made bomb shelters for the civilians? For what purpose? What civilians should they have built the bomb shelters for? Are you suggesting that Hamas has the capabilities to build a bomb shelter for 2 million people? Who do they build? Where do they build the bomb shelters? Everywhere in Gaza? The entirety of Gaza? Should they have built just one big bomb shelter, like a physical dome? I know Israel has the Iron Dome. I'm talking, should Hamas have built a physical dome over the entirety of Gaza? What would have been the purpose of building bomb shelters? Seems like it would have been all for naught, right? Move 2 million people underground? Explain to me how that works. I mean, unless the mole people have been there for generations and have already built the underground infrastructure for an underground city. Not just tunnels, a literal underground city to fit a quarter of the size, a quarter of the population of New York City. Then I don't see what a bomb shelter or a few bomb shelters would have done.
They went into. They built it when they were occupying Gaza.
Are you and right? That's true of that one. But I mean, they have a vast tunnel network, obviously, as everybody knows. But I don't care. I don't want to get into the weeds on this. The $1 million question is like, what can we do? Now, it's obviously insanely difficult
as Americans,
to say.
I think we can stop aid immediately. I mean, obviously, it's not going to happen under Trump.
I'm in favor of that, by the way.
Okay. I mean, good.
I mean, I think
we should call for all aid to be ceased. And I think we should stop protecting them in the UN.
What should have Israel done on October 8th, I guess? Like, what would have been an appropriate response for their government?
I mean,
without saying not this.
What should they have done on October 8th? I mean, I think that there is they're hitting strategic sites to attempt to take out leadership. They should have, but let's talk.
Well, the leadership was underground.
Yeah, to look at that.
I mean, the first thing they should have done, if you want my opinion, is they should have got the hostages out. I mean, that seems like the most obvious thing, and the way to get hostages out safely is to go negotiate a deal. It seems pretty simple. That's the best case scenario. Of course, though, that doesn't make Netanyahu look tough and almighty to the conservatives and right-wingers in Israel, which would then be a threat to his power. I mean, if you're not able to look at this through the political lens, in terms of like what they did, the reason they did what they did was because of how it would benefit them politically, then you're just not engaging with the topic seriously. You just don't understand, whether you're willfully misunderstanding, or you just don't have the capacity or capabilities to understand it. But if you're unable to look at this through the politics of it all, then you're missing like 75 to 90% of the story.
To look at that moment in history, like maybe it was.
I disagree, because they had to do something.
Maybe in that moment,
right? You do something. The first thing you do is you save your civilian hostages. And the way you do that, ensuring that they all come home alive and safe. And this was done early on after they'd already, done a number of weeks of bombing. But I believe it was around like Thanksgiving when Hamas agreed to a deal that would see the release of all innocent civilian children and women, if I remember correctly, or most of them. Especially, I think it was all the children and most of women, I think. And that deal happened, and all those people were able to get home safely. And Palestinian political prisoners were allowed to go see their families for the first time in who knows how long, too. That's the negotiation process that played out in that one instance. And it showed that the negotiation process works. And then Israel went right back to their campaign of bombing. And that's how you ended up with hostages being killed alongside tens of thousands of innocent civilians. I mean, it is my understanding that if not all, the vast majority, and when I mean, and if not all, we're talking about like one or two, the hostages who were taken alive by Hamas on October 7th into Gaza, except maybe one or two. Let me put a number on it because I don't have it in front of me. But the vast majority of the hostages who were taken alive into Gaza, who did not make it out alive, were killed by Israel and the IDF's bombings. Or in the case of those men who tried to escape, literally shot to death by IDF soldiers who saw their white flags and decided to just shoot them anyway.
They had to go in and bomb or whatever they do. I think that any action that they would have taken at that point, frankly, was a function of literally decades of oppressing people and attempting to bring this to an eventuality.
Right.
I mean, this was.
And so, what should they have done
ages ago? Well, I mean,
you're avoiding. Yeah.
Okay, I think what they should have done is begun empowering Palestinians in the West Bank. They should have done
this. This is my favorite answer,
okay.
Sam. You're saying that this is what Hassan told me. They should disband their government and lift the borders in response to the worst terrorist attack that's ever happened.
I think, honestly, when you...
I mean, listen, that obviously wasn't going to happen. Nor was it even in like a thing to even think would be done. Obviously, it was not going to happen. I'm not going to, partake in like what I wish for or, what my own political leanings would want me. Obviously, in reality, that wasn't going to happen. Again, I don't even know if Hamas, I don't even know if Hassan said that. But taking Ethan at his word, I'm just engaging with what Ethan said.
When you see that your policies have failed, but I don't think
you actually don't believe that that's a real thing, though. I'm interested in having like a real conversation. You can't like live in a fairy tale land where, in response to the worst military or terrorist attack of all time, Israel, who's already, as you state, like genocidal and racist and all these terrible things, is going to lift their borders and disband their government.
Wait a second. You're asking me what they should have done, and that's different.
No, in a realistic way, not in a fairy tale, Sam.
Well, listen, there is no realistic thing. Their agenda has been, it has been quite clear. Their agenda has been, since Ariel Sharon walked on the Temple Mount and tried to scuttle peace talks, the agenda since the assassination of Rabin by arch Zionists in Israel, the agenda has been to bring about this moment. There is no doubt about it. The annihilation of the Palestinian people has been an agenda in Israel for far too long. So from the perspective, it's anything I say is fantastical relative to what they...
I mean, this is just what I said before, too. And I had someone in the chat calling me they didn't outright say I was anti-Semitic, because how are you gonna call me that? But they weren't. They were saying like, oh, they were asking for it, right? Sam is making the same argument in terms how there are political realities in Israel that wanted something like this to happen. That doesn't mean they planned it. Doesn't mean it was some sort of false flag attack. But it was a political want for there to be a reason for them to be able to say, this is why we have to do this. And they let it happen in some instances, if that's how you want to read into it. I'm not saying they necessarily let it happen in the way, like, directly, but they built onto it in terms of how they emboldened Hamas. They let Hamas have certain capabilities. They had communications with Hamas, let them know certain things.
Would actually do anything.
There's nothing they could have done that because of the situation, anything they would have done would have been.
There was no plan that on this day they were going to do this. But if you go back 10 or 15 years ago and look into Bibi Netanyahu's brain, the idea that this is ultimately going to happen was definitely the agenda.
What, in terms of like attacking Gaza or inciting an attack?
I would imagine both, frankly. But to find a way to eliminate the Palestinians, this has been the agenda of at one time what I think was a smaller segment of the Israeli body politic, and I think has increasingly become an even larger portion of the Israeli politic. So I mean, anything I say in terms of should is fantastical. Anything.
So yeah, okay. I mean, so this is like I understand where you're coming from, right? Like
there was an opportunity for a ceasefire that was called in November, in December. They could have held a ceasefire at any point, and the amount of killing would have been far less. They could have done that. They could have ended it after a week.
I mean, Hamas could have ended the war anytime too.
How could have Hamas ended the war?
By releasing the hostages?
No, listen. Israel has said time and time again that the release of the hostages is not going to end their assault on Gaza. They have said this over
I don't believe that's
over and over.
I haven't seen those statements. I've seen the opposite. I believe that
you really haven't seen those statements?
No, I haven't. I'll review them. I mean, it depends when it depends when they were made too, right? Like, what's it in response to?
At any time they could have done that.
Well, what has Hamas done to end the war?
Hamas offered
what have they done to end the war?
Early dawn to say Hamas offered all the hostages in agreement in response to Israel not coming into Gaza. I mean, there's just to defend Israel's actions.
That didn't happen either.
Being inevitable. Like, when do you think they should have ended it? When do you think they should have ended it?
So who have ended what?
You've asked me the question, what should have Israel done? You tell me what they should have done. Do you think what they've done is right?
Well, I've clearly stated no, Sam.
Okay, so tell me what they should have done.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, hindsight is a beautiful thing, but in my opinion, like you said, I think some more specific strikes, I think more moving slowly, because as you kind of pointed out but didn't really acknowledge,
when do you think they should have ended?
Do you want me to answer?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the leadership is obviously underground. So it's going to be a long mission of trying to get them. It's going to be a difficult mission. But I think militarily, they probably have some obligation to their citizenry, at the very least, to like take out but we're ignoring the fact that missiles are being shot into Israel nonstop. And I know you're going to say, Iron Dome stops most of them, which is true. But at the same time, I mean, a country needs to respond to that. They can't just allow missiles to be shot in.
Tell me the non-fantastical version of what they should have done. Should have been 2 weeks, 3 weeks? How many Hamas leaders, how many members of Hamas should they have killed before they leave? Because we know that Blinken said on his way out that virtually every Hamas member of Hamas that they've killed has probably been replaced by someone who's lost a family member or an entire family or whatnot. So you tell me, Ethan, if you're the one with the sensical perspective on this, and mine is fantastical, what should they have done that would have been appropriate in your mind?
Yeah. So besides like special operations and stuff, I think it would have been a good idea to, I think there's a space where they could like try to find peace partners in Gaza before just destroying the whole thing. Like obviously they approached it completely wrong, right? But there are ways I think that could have happened that are realistic, like trying to forge some kind of peace partner, some kind of alliance, some kind of international
All those
coalition.
people were marching. They were marching. They were marching in the Great March of Return, week after week after week.
Sam, was there Hamas activity at the Great March?
Sinwar was marching. Sinwar was marching with them.
Were people attacking the border wall?
During the Great March of Return, the first dozens of these things before the snipers, no, they weren't. So there were the people for peace.
There was Hamas activity. They were attacking the fence. They were like trying to cross the border.
They were
but not
attacking
militants. Militants were trying to cross the border.
You're telling me that in the first dozen of these marches, there were people attacking the fence?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, again, I think that there's a way for Israel to try. I think they can obviously pursue.
I mean, attacking it, let's again take Ethan at his word here. I think he's incorrect, but I would have to look up more information about the specifics of it. Again, this is something that happened. When was the Great March of Return? It was like I want to say like 2019, 2018 to 2019. Someone said. Let me look it up. Yeah. (2018, 2019). A series of demonstrations held each Friday in the Gaza Strip near the Gaza-Israel border from March 30th, 2018 until December 27th, 2019, in which Israeli forces killed a total of 223 Palestinians. As you can see, Palestinian casualties for attacking a fence, according to Ethan, which somehow is justifiable. I'm not following.
The way that they're doing it is impossible, right? Like it's fucked up, it's insane, it's genocidal, it's horrific.
They're not pursuing peace.
I'm not saying. I'm saying the opposite.
I don't
Sam.
think Israel is.
Well, you asked me
peace.
what should they have done. I mean, obviously
Yes.
they're not. They're not pursuing peace. I agree with you. Like,
Here's the thing. Like I think Ethan made a point that I agree with. That the scenario from again his alleged scenario that Hassan recommended. Again, whether Hassan said this or not, I have no idea. But again, in order to actually engage here, I need to take Ethan at his word. I think that what Ethan said, in terms of what he portrayed Hassan's position as, was sort of fantastical. It's not doesn't exist in reality. But then neither does Ethan's. His is a fairy tale as well. They're just on opposite ends of the Brothers Grimm spectrum. I don't know how to bring it up. It's just neither make any neither. I mean, I guess the one part of Ethan's that makes more sense is they could have relied more on special operations to pinpoint specific targeted attacks. That's the one area that makes that exists in a reality. Closest to a reality, I guess.
quite the opposite. That's not what they're doing. But I'm saying there could have been a path, although it's not. I think, unfortunately, I think their response was inevitable based on everything that happened.
You think it was inevitable that they would kill these many people and
Here's
they
the thing.
would use food supplies as a weapon, that they would have leveled hospitals and universities and 80-90% of the homes? I mean, how?
Here's why I'm actually sort of happy Ethan said that. I want to bring Israel's response was inevitable. I think that's great that he brought that up, because it appears to me that if you believe that, then the logical conclusion, if you're looking at historical facts without any biases, is that October 7th was inevitable as well. How you expect to actually dehumanize, not say Palestinians shouldn't be dog catchers, or not even say people who believe in a free Palestine shouldn't be dog catchers. That was Ethan's example of dehumanization before, saying someone shouldn't be in a position of authority. But how do you expect to actually dehumanize people? Take away their homes, seclude them in an area where you decide, a completely foreign nation that they have no power to elect or otherwise, that foreign nation decides what goes in, what goes out, who goes in, and who goes out. Tells them that they couldn't, that they specifically, because of their ethnicity as Palestinians, can't go down certain roads in neighborhoods where they live, where even tourists are allowed to go down. You take away their rights because of who they are. An apartheid state. You put those people in those conditions. It is absolutely inevitable that eventually a group of those people will get together and do what they need to do in order to do what they see as fighting back. How is that not inevitable? You put the boot on somebody over and over and over again. How is it not inevitable that eventually they're not going to want the boot on their back anymore? You said it, Ethan. If Israel's response to October 7th was inevitable, so was October 7th and anything else the Palestinian people end up doing as a result of the occupation.
I mean, how
I don't know to what extent, but like a huge response was definitely inevitable. I'm not justifying it, Sam. You asked me a question. I'm answering it. You're putting this on me like I'm saying.
No. I'm just saying inevitability. I wonder what you must think of an Israeli body politic where this level of atrocity is inevitable.
Well, you described your and Hamas's understanding of the IDF. I wouldn't say that. I can't say to what extent, but you agree that a huge response was inevitable.
I listen. I believe a response that was inevitable by Israel, and that is because I have a much more theoretically jaded view of that country and their agenda, I think, than you. But like to expect that what they've done is inevitable.
To what? Well, Sam,
I just wonder, like, what it is that you think is in that body politic. Like, listen, like, I don't think it's inevitable, just to use an example in this country. I don't think that it's inevitable that we are going to be deporting and disappearing, immigrants in this country. I think it's possible, but my perspective on America is still too optimistic to think that's inevitable. I can't even imagine what I would think would be inevitable. And I think, listen, our invasion of Iraq and the complete lack of caring and the only thing that would even mitigate that is there were no images coming out of Iraq, or very few, and certainly I was exposing them more than the American population writ large. But to perceive what we did in Iraq as inevitable.
It's a different situation. That's completely, yeah. I mean, that was completely unpredictable. But we kind of touched on it. Where Hamas, and again, to what end this even matters is it doesn't ultimately. But Hamas knew that they were going to bomb the fuck out of Gaza.
Listen, I would imagine Hamas thought there was going to be a response, but they wouldn't have taken hostages if they thought that they couldn't use those hostages.
Of course,
as a way
they thought they could. I don't deny that. Yeah.
Of deterring Israel from entering, and that was a miscalculation on their part. They presumed that Israel was more interested in those hostages, I think, than they had assumed.
Well, and that's part of what a lot of the civil unrest in Israel is about, is that a lot of people do care about the hostages and think that the government needs to stop the war and focus on.
That's absolutely what some of the civil unrest is about. Whether it's a lot of people who are taking part in that is certainly debatable.
Getting the hostages back and not killing innocent civilians. So that there is.
I wonder about that last part, but
right. Which part?
The part about the killing of innocent civilians. I mean, I think that
I said that's what they're doing.
Wait,
hostages. I think then they had assumed.
I just rewinded it 30 seconds because there's Ethan is. I missed Ethan saying it, but Sam brings it up. Did Ethan say that part of the protest is about? I just want to hear it.
Well, and that's part of what a lot of the civil unrest in Israel is about, is that a lot of people do care about the hostages and think that the government needs to stop the war and focus on getting the hostages back and not killing innocent civilians. So,
yeah, he said it. Sam is absolutely right. It is not about. There is no movement. There's no large. I will contend there is very likely some people in Israel who disagree with the killing of innocent civilians in Gaza. They exist. I mean, we know for sure because there are young people, not many, but there are at least a few young people who are refusing, and they're being jailed for refusing to do their mandatory military service because they don't want to take part in it. Commend them fully. That's very brave of those people to do. It's not a lot, though. And in terms of like the broader movement that's protesting, they're not protesting the killing of innocent civilians. At least that's not their main concern or their vocal concern or the concern you see them out there for visually, physically. It's just not. I haven't seen it. I don't think there is any visual evidence of it.
I wonder about that last part, but
which part?
The part about the killing of innocent civilians. I mean, I think that
I said that's what they're doing.
No. I'm saying I wonder if the Israeli body politic.
Oh, you think the Israelis want civilians to die?
I think the Israeli.
I don't even think. Certainly, there are some that do, or have stated they don't care. And I think the latter part is the majority. I think they don't care. They don't care. I mean, like I said, post 9/11 here in the United States, most Americans didn't care about whatever casualties there would be. They didn't care. I mean, you heard it in the rhetoric. You heard it. John McCain, bomb, Iran. I mean, What do you think happens when that happens? You could say you don't want innocent civilians to die, but they are. And if you're going to carry out those attacks, then at the very least, you don't care that innocent civilians will die.
I mean, obviously not all Israelis, but I think that enough of Israelis to maintain this government believe that Palestinians in Gaza, that their lives have no value, that they are all future enemies, that they that they all represent a threat to Israel. And I think that's, I think that's a twisted perspective.
Just so you know, there were massive demonstrations in Israel, tens of thousands of people in a country that's relatively small. So I think characterizing like the majority of the public as wanting to kill civilians.
Those protests were for specifically the Israeli hostages. They just were. This is not debatable. That's what they were about. You can look it up. You can read the reports. That's fully what it was about. I mean, if that means that less people, innocent civilians in Gaza would die, that's just like residual. That's not what the protests were about, though. The protests were solely about getting the Israeli hostages out of Gaza. That's just, this is it.
Is a little sick personally, but it's. I guess you could say whatever you want.
I'm basing this on conversations with Israeli reporters that there does not seem to be in Israel a majority, at the very least, of people who are concerned about the fate of the Palestinians in Gaza. Certainly, they want.
Sam is absolutely right. This is not conjecture. I'm not guessing this. There's been on the ground reporting, and much of this is from Israel. Like, this is from their own home outlets, news outlets, their media, interviews, on the street discussions, eyewitness accounts, activists on both the right and the not right, because there really isn't much of a left in Israel. That this is what these protests are about. And there are interviews showing, the interviews out there show, that I've seen dozens and dozens and dozens. Again, this doesn't mean all Israelis, because this is just specific people's opinions, but it does show that it is a lot of people, and it appears to be the majority, either just do not care or support the killing of people in Gaza. And we've heard from people who explain why they don't care or why they support it, because they say, and this is defending the deaths of children, they say it sounds horrible. Some of them even realize this. They even say it. But these children will grow up to hate us. and or want to kill us. So they have to die, or it's okay they die, or that's why I don't care that they die. We've heard this. This isn't just us making it up. It's in reports from Israeli media. It's on video. It's in written reports. It's on podcasts. There's Zionist podcasters. I remember it was a whole big thing talking about this, openly saying how they don't care that they die. And like laughing about it. This was a scandal here in the US. And over there, it was just like, what's the big deal? Again, I would never paint with a broad brush and see someone from Israel and say this is their opinion, because they could be the individual who doesn't feel this way. But the polls show that there is a majority in Israel who feels this way.
Hostages, and again, not all Israelis, but look, I can make analogous assessments of the United States at various times about things that reflect poorly on our national body politic as well. But the proof is in the pudding.
Can I tell you something? 300,000 protesters in Tel Aviv, 200,000 in the rest of the country. That's 500,000 people out in the street protesting the government of a country that has like 6 million or 5 million in the.
Are you talking about the protests about the judiciary?
I'm talking about the.
He keeps bringing up, there were protests. Yes, there were protests that are without a doubt tearing at Israel's core of there's internal strife politically. But these are, as Sam brought up, political protests for the hostages. They are not the same type of anti-war protests that popped up in the U.S. in the years following 9/11. There is no concern for the people in Gaza at these protests, or it is not the primary concern at the very, and I think I'm giving them a big hand here by saying that, honestly. It is just not. And Ethan either does not know this or is purposefully misleading his viewers.
To release the hostages.
Okay, to release the hostages.
Yeah. To stop, to ceasefire. Ceasefire, Sam. That's what that means.
They were
500,000.
They were calling for a ceasefire, or they were calling for a release of the hostages?
Well, what do you mean? What's the point of telling Hamas to release the hostages? Yeah, of course it's a ceasefire, Sam.
Well, but Israel has to, and I know I'll look this up.
Deal with this.
I don't have much
500,000
time.
Israel.
Wait. Let's look this up and see how many times this
is so like I don't even know what he like he can't be doing this genuinely, because he's reading it himself and he's seeing what this was about. And we know that releasing the hostages does not mean ceasefire in the same way that the Palestinians or pro-Palestinian activists view ceasefire deals. Israel has time and time again put it on the table that no matter what happens, the killing will continue. Any sort of hostage negotiation is a temporary ceasefire that will just last a few days. There is no scenario where Israel has offered, or the protesters protesting against the Israeli government's position, there's no scenario where they have ever said no more at all in Gaza. There's just never been.
The Israeli government has said return of the hostages will not end.
Sam, I'm responding to you saying the majority of Israelis want civilians to die. 500,000 people came to the street for a ceasefire of a country of 5 million, Sam. That's 10%.
Israel just broke the latest ceasefire. Okay, where is the political response from the Israeli people? I mean, the idea that Gazans can be held responsible for an election that happened 18 years ago.
Sam, you
when
said the
half
majority of
population is
Israelis
under-
want civilians to die.
I think the majority.
I just think the majority, from what we've seen in the polling, just does not care. You want to include the people who are supportive of it to the people who are just neutral about it, which in my opinion means you support it, because how do you not? Like, it's a very clear thing to be against. I mean, again, in the US, the anti-war movement made a huge deal about the innocent lives. You heard it constantly about the death of the innocent people in the Middle East, in Iraq, for example. You know, we constantly hear George Bush responsible, and now, years after, the common refrain was George Bush responsible for the death of 500,000 Iraqis. It would be like if the anti-war movement in the U.S. was strictly about bringing on-the-ground soldiers home. We need to obviously continue our actions and our bombings over there and our airstrikes over there, but bring the on-the-ground soldiers home. I guess that's the closest sort of analogy I can make there in terms of what those protests are basically the equivalent to.
Of Israelis do not have a problem with what's going on in Gaza. That is my opinion.
I think that unfortunately might be true to the extent that they've gotten.
Well, then we agree.
They've got.
What? Why did I just waste time here then? Why? What is going on here? What? What? Why am I at the 3-hour mark here? Why did I not end this an hour and a half ago? What am I doing? What's the purpose of any of this if you're going to argue counter to it the entire time and then just concede at the end that Sam's position and my position is correct? What am I? Why am I? Have a good night, everybody. I mean, what am I? Why are we doing this? What is the purpose? What? When he does finally talk to Hassan, are they going to argue for 2 hours and then Ethan's going to be like, yeah, you were my best friend all along. I'm not mad at you, buddy. What? Like, what? Is that the end game? What is going on here? I don't get it.
Much more radical. Unfortunately, tragically, everybody's been a lot more radicalized since October 7th. And that's tragic. I agree. I think people in Israel are jaded and they're cynical and they don't care, like you said, and I think it's tragic.
Yes. Well, that's what my contention was. I mean, I'm looking at something from May.
People keep saying that Ethan is just trying to get clips of Sam agreeing with him to use against Hassan or something. But that's not what's happening here. These are clips of Ethan agreeing with Sam's position, and Sam is arguing from the position that he agrees, or he and Hassan are in agreement on the issues. Like, Ethan isn't like walking Sam into a corner, even like disingenuously, and then Sam is going, oh, then I agree with you. The opposite is happening. Sam is laying out his position, and then Ethan is saying, oh, I agree with you, after arguing against that very same position for an hour before.
I wouldn't say most of them want to kill civilians, though.
Well, I think that they don't.
And I wouldn't say that there isn't a sizable portion of of Israeli citizenry that want a ceasefire. When 500,000 people, Sam, marched out on the street.
Wait, and now he's just going back to... Does he even know what he's saying? he's arguing for position A. And then he says, no, you're right. I agree with you. It's position B. And then he goes, but it's actually position A. What?
Of a country of 5 million for a ceasefire.
This Pew research, 39% say Israel's military response against Hamas in Gaza has been about right. 34% say not gone far enough.
Sure.
Now, granted, that was in May of this past year, so maybe that's changed. I would hope, but that's all the most recent
horrible
data.
Yeah, no, I know that the sentiment
40% last year said that Israelis should govern the Gaza Strip.
I know that people.
I don't know what's left now.
Yeah, I agree. It's tragic what's happened, because I agree with you that they've become jaded and they've become very comfortable with the idea of violence happening there in general, right? And I think it sucks. I think and sucks is an understatement. I think it's tragic, and like I don't know what. Truthfully, the situation is so fucked up that, and like, it just feels hopeless sometimes. But
it certainly does. But in the meantime, in this country, and we may not have the opportunity for a while, but we should cease all aid to Israel. We should stop protecting them in the UN. We should stop trying to pressure the ICJ and the ICC, and that's
well, incidentally, I agree with all those things too. I think that that's the most we can do as a country to try to stop the war, and it's something that we should be doing. And I think Kamala Harris would have been a lot more likely to do something on that front. Certain
we won't know.
We can't know, and that's the great thing.
Well, listen, I appreciate the time. I gotta go because I'm supposed to have dinner for my child. But,
well, I'll say this. This was way more combative than I expected. Ultimately, though, I don't think that what do we disagree on? I mean, I don't know. I don't even know. Maybe I see too much good in the Israeli population. I mean, I don't know what's ultimately the disagreements here.
Well, I mean, look, I'm not. It's largely, in my mind, impossible to really fully assess. I mean, yes, there was a protest last year, 500,000 people who wanted the hostages back in the ceasefire. I don't know if there's been, well, they wanted the hostages back. I don't know.
It's not a magic wand. It's a ceasefire.
Yeah, and they got a ceasefire, and then the Israeli government broke it, and they.
Well, so hold on. Our disagreements is that I'm too optimistic about the Israeli citizenry.
Listen, I'm not here to adjudicate what.
I'm just trying to summarize our conversation. That's all.
Well, I mean, you summarize for you. I'll summarize for me. I think that, it is what it is, and I think I don't remember this conversation. We can put into AI and have it summarize it, but I'll
do that for you, and I'll let you know what it says.
All right,
we'll leave it to the robots.
Okay.
Sam, I do appreciate you calling in. I do value your input on all this, and I appreciate the conversation. I think it's good to have conversations like this, like open and honest, even if they're combative. And I think ultimately on the larger points we agree, but we managed to find things to fight about anyway. And that's what two Jews do, isn't it, Sam?
That happens. That's my understanding. Appreciate it. All right, take it easy, man.
Have a great time with your children at dinner there. Enjoy.
Thanks, I will.
Bye.
All right, you too. Bye.
So everyone kept telling me to go to the end. What happened?
That was way different than I thought it was going to be.
Oh!
But okay.
Oh.
I thought it was interesting. I
think
enjoyed that as a watcher.
Was I owned?
I don't think you were owned. I don't think anybody was owned. I think it was two people that are highly opinionated hashing it out. And I think I personally like when people do that.
Yeah.
I don't get turned off by the combativeness.
So right.
Maybe it's that's the half Jewish
issue,
part of me.
But the truthfully is like, again, on the larger points, we agree. That's why I take cross with this issue of being like, he's a genocide supporter, he's a fucking baby killer, and all this insane. He goes, Sam, you never heard of hyperbole? Yeah, I've heard of hyperbole. It's fuck. You're
the king of hyperbole.
Yeah. So I mean, like, is my downfall that I have too much faith or I have too much optimism in the Israeli citizenry? Maybe. I guess that's where we differ. That seemed to be where we are differing the most. I don't know.
I think you're right to identify that as and I mean, Sam is older and he's in his 50s or something, and so maybe he's just more jaded.
That's actually directly, and I don't know who this guy is. I know he's been like their producer for a long time, and I don't know what his politics are, but I think it's very funny he brings that up because that actually is a point in the opposite favor of Ethan's, because polling shows that when it comes to Jewish people who are supportive of Israel or Zionists, they tend to be older. So the fact that Sam would have a more critical opinion of Israel isn't a point to him being a more jaded, older Jewish person. It's actually a point against sort of Ethan Klein and how right wing or backwards or however you want to put it he is on this topic, because statistically, as a younger Jewish person, he should actually be more critical of Israel than Sam. I mean, it is in the United States, it is Jewish activists who are leading the pro-Palestinian cause alongside actual Palestinians and Arabs and Muslims.
Yeah, he definitely is more jaded. There's no question about that, and rightfully so, right? Rightfully so.
But yeah, I enjoyed watching that.
I will say, as a Jewish person, the contentious point in the argument of the clip of Hassan, it kind of shocked me, to be honest.
I was a little, to be honest, and as much as I love Sam, he was being very obtuse, in my opinion, when trying to talk about that clip to avoid criticizing Hassan, which is fine. I understand he doesn't want to get into that game, right, of being on record, being like, oh yeah, Hassan shouldn't have said that or whatever, right? But ultimately, obviously, I greatly disagree with him, and I think it's kind of...
But see, the disagreement from me is that, again, the clip is obviously taken out of context. So I don't know the context of it. I think Hassan's a smart guy. I think there's probably context here that makes that this is clipped out of context. But I don't have proof of that, so I'm going to take Ethan at his word. The thing I disagree with that clip with Hassan is that I think people who at some point had a positive view of Israel, who have changed their opinion based on what they've seen Israel do, I think those people have value and meaning, and what they believe and what their change of heart has meaning, I should say, and that I don't throw them off wayside. I'm happy to have them on our side. So with that said, I agree that Hassan is wrong there. I don't think anything in that clip is anti-Semitic. And the fact that Ethan keeps saying a group of people based on their political ideology should not even get to the position of dog catcher is not dehumanizing. Ethan heard the word, in the best case scenario, Ethan heard the word dog and knows that it is dehumanizing to call someone subhuman and compare them to rats or dogs or whatever. But that's not what Hassan said.
it's funny how he talks about how dangerous it is for me to call out anti-Semitism or how ridiculous it is for me to weaponize it like that. It's like when at the same time.
It's a weird thing because you don't really want to like. I understand the impulse to just want to have a conversation with Sam and keep it with like the here and now of, your beliefs and everything, but the degree to which the harassment that you and Hila have experienced over the last couple of years, like it is part of the story, and like,
yeah, it's true.
I don't know, it's tricky because like I get the impulse to like not want to get into it, but like that is a component of all of this. That
well, and unfortunately, whatever Sam's
what harassment like have they received? That's what I don't. And what harassment have they received that actually is what they say? What this isn't conversation. Harassment is wrong no matter what, obviously, whatever the harassment is. But the point of this conversation is anti-Semitism, right? Was it just general harassment? Or was it something specific about them being Jewish? Or was it based on their stated opinions on Israel? And they're conflating that with anti-Semitism. I wouldn't surprise me if they've received all three: general harassment related to their opinion on Israel, and harassment related to maybe being Jewish too. I don't know. But I want to know what he considers it to be. Because I think it's all wrong. But one of them has broader implications. I mean, this was a lot of people were watching this stream. If you're watching me for the first time on YouTube or Twitch, we got over what do we got? Close to like 1,500 people, over 1,150 people watching concurrently right now. Who knows how many it's been over? Says 10,000 views just on YouTube over the course of the stream. If you haven't watched this channel before, please click that subscribe button or that follow button on Twitch. Subscribe on YouTube, follow on Twitch. It's free to do. Doesn't cost you anything. You'll just know when I upload videos, go live. I'll be doing stuff like this even more. I mean, I regularly stream, but I don't usually do like watching debates or discussions and commentate on them, because generally I think a lot of this stuff does tend to go into YouTube drama territory. And the fact that Sam Seder was involved with this, it made me know that it wasn't going to go in that territory. Because I don't care about I know it gets a lot of clicks. I know it gets a lot of, I'm older than I look. I have kids. I have very little time. I love to do this, but I need to use the time that I do this to actually do stuff, even if we're just fucking around having a good time. Either I want to have fun or I want to talk about something substantive. And I don't have fun, and I don't think we're talking about anything important when it's just YouTube drama bullshit. But this wasn't that. Yeah, subscribe, follow. Not going to take any calls like I usually do because we went long here. Oh, I'm not even up on the feed here. Here we go. I'll read these super chats. And he says, "Bro, you are kids." I don't think you know how old I am. I'm an old man. Stray Sheep in a Meadow says, "Matt, you look 25." I'm 38. I have an almost 10-year-old. And I have a almost 6-year-old. I'm an old man. I can't really see it because luckily I was blessed with a, knock on wood, a good head of hair, but I'm already going a little gray. Bay Photo says 3 hours of phone calls start now. I usually go 3 hours just for phone calls. Stuart McGill says Matt is borderline Gen X. How dare you? I'm a proud millennial. 86 is not borderline Gen X. That's like 5 years removed, 5 or 6 years removed. Oh, I love hearing all the old people in the chat. Got people in their same age as me, in their 40s, in their 50s, in their 70s. Hell yeah. Old people power. I actually don't feel old. Like I'm joking. I mean I am 38 and I do have 2 kids, but I don't feel old. I play sports. I coach my kids' soccer team, so I stay very active. I'm in a soccer league myself. I still go out, go to shows. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. So the worst thing I do is people who watch me regularly know I am horrible eater and soda drinker. No alcohol, but lots of caffeine. Raiders Rock. What is this question? Would you accept a former neo-Nazi that knew full well what Hitler did and liked him? Does he? When you say former neo-Nazi, are they now disavowing Hitler and they no longer like him and they realize that they were 100% wrong and were led astray and they were misinformed and propagandized and possibly even brainwashed, and they think what Hitler did was horrible? If there's a full turnaround, then yes, I think there is room for redemption. I do think you only get really one shot at that, and there's not like you go back to being a neo-Nazi and then try to come back again. I do think everyone is redeemable though and should be given a second chance. MP says, "Why do you hate Gen X? That is sad." I don't hate Gen X. I don't hate any generation. It's the same thing like we were talking about in the whole conversation. I don't paint anyone with a broad brush. However, you do have to look at the stats and the polling and the surveys and all that stuff, and it does seem like Gen X is the least progressive generation. Boomers have actually trended more progressive due to Donald Trump, and Gen X has actually got more conservative. It's been very bizarre to see. Boomers, in my estimation, are no longer the problematic generation when it comes to our political realities and elections. Gen X and young Gen Z men are our biggest issue. Truthfully. What millennials are more progressive than all, but specifically Gen Z women, and only Gen Z women. I think that's good though. That young women are getting more and more progressive. I think they will lead the charge no matter what happens. Even as Gen Z men if they continue to get more conservative, because I believe demographically women are in larger numbers than the men. But Gen X is a huge problem politically, broadly speaking. Obviously, that doesn't mean all Gen Xers. There are very many, but polling shows Gen X as a whole is the generation that has trended more conservative than. It's incredible to see boomers are not the most conservative in terms of support for Trump and things like that. They are not. It's amazing. The whole okay boomer thing, it needs to be changed to okay Gen Xer. I don't know. Mars Falcon says, "Can Gen X even catch dogs, bruh?" No, they shouldn't be dog catchers. I'm dehumanizing Gen X. It's what it is it appears like the switchover happened during COVID, and it fried their brains. All right, let me read some super chats really quick, and then that's it. That's the show. Tokyo Hans, money is the root of all evil. Now please enjoy some evil money. Thank you, Tokyo Hans. Tokyo Hans also says, Usama is asking me to tell you to get him on your show to talk about Balochistan. Right, we will. Imagination Scene says, hey, thanks for being one of the few people that has in the past debunked some of the crazy Pallywood conspiracy theories. That has been one of the most disgusting things I've seen, the Pallywood stuff. We don't really have time to get into it now. If you want to know more, let me know. Maybe I'll do an episode about it. I've definitely talked about it on stream. I've definitely talked about it on Twitter. Bay Photo with a super chat. I genuinely wish for this drama to fizzle out because for Ethan, it's clearly been more about Hassan than it has been about Israel for some time now. Phil B says, you already watched this, right? Ethan's pretty gross. This is my first time. I watched it live on air. I saw a few clips. Not all of them. Some of the moments caught me by surprise. I watched a few short clips, though, of some of the bigger moments. But some of the things I was not expecting. I think to me, the most shocking moment that I had not seen prior to watching it live with you is when Ethan described Israel's actions as them being, I forgot the exact word he used, but it was something to the effect of Hamas forced Israel to do what it's been doing. Essentially, Hamas forced Israel to conduct genocide. That was truly a moment I was not ready for. And, if it wasn't for that, I think, I didn't agree with Ethan, but I don't think anything he said until that moment was all that, obviously I disagreed with it, but it wasn't like so outlandish you couldn't hold a conversation with him. And then he got to that moment and it was pretty revolting. That to me was the standout moment, and I think it paints him in a light that he doesn't wish to be painted in, but it certainly does do that. Emily with a super chat. I was pissed when Biden missed his meeting with the Pope because of Carter's death. I was hoping Francis would give him the JD treatment and scare the ghoul. Tim Cogan. Ethan only complains about second or third order shit. Renee with a few super chats. Ethan is self-centered enough to think that he's doing a crusader and a patriotic duty while defending his family, my livelihood. It's offensive dive to dogs being gate kept that way. All dog catchers are fascistic to strays. That's a good point, actually, Renee. Renee says, if anyone got dog walked, it was Ethan Shapiro. The last time anyone in the U.S. acted like Hamas comparatively, it was Nat Turner and John Brown. Renee says, Matthew Bolton, this is where you can start to see he capes as an ally for the cause, but does all this liberal Zionist Hasbara. I mean, that line about Hamas forcing Israel to kill innocent civilians, that is a 100% Zionist position. And I haven't heard any sort of ally to Palestinians in any way, shape, or form put that position forward because it's outlandish. It's outlandish. Tokyo Hans, Ethan's crash out has been depressing. Started watching his show after the Crowder incident, but can't watch him anymore. On a positive note, Tesla stock is down 3.38%. Claire Masuzawa with a super chat. I can understand Ethan's sensitivity to not hearing the same comparison made for people growing up in Israel, because I'm sure it hurts to see Hilla be described as evil when she was just living her life, but his anger is misplaced. I don't know much about I don't know much about Ethan to begin with. I know even less about his wife. I do know that she was IDF military soldier. Again, everyone there's conscripted unless you leave the country, obviously, or go to jail for not doing the mandatory service. So just being IDF in and of itself, I guess, doesn't mean much on its own. But from my understanding, she volunteered to do certain things that puts her a little bit more, uh, involves her a little bit more than just being able to say I was, it was part of mandatory service. I had no say in the matter. I don't know too much about it though. This is just, I'm just telling you what I've heard. Ryan Lennon fan says Hilla wasn't just living her life; she joined the IOF, right? Renee says almost seems intentional if you factor in that the IDF is mostly occupied in Ehem occupying the West Bank. Themic says Israel used to control Sinai, but they're the strongest they've talking about formal recognition of Palestine. Right. There's no way you can say Israel's in a bad place right now. There's no way you can say they're not. Hamas objectively has gotten closer to their goals due to Israel's response to October 7th. Tokyo Han says, I am writing a thesis called The Abe Effect. It is based on how the general population's opinion turn on those who have been attacked and their past acts come to light, like Israel or the UHG CEO. Oh, Ren, thank you for just a super chat. No comment. Just wanted to throw me some money. I appreciate it. Castrine Cubic with a super chat. In October 1970, the FLQ, a French-Canadian separatist group, kidnapped 2 politicians after exploding bombs for weeks in public spaces. Did Canada make a crater out of Quebec? No. Right. Mike Thompson, great job. Thank you, Mike Thompson. Over on Twitch, really quick, thank you to Looney Tunes 9000. Right said Rob. Han Juden, Osby Me, Serious Business, and Ponderosa Pine, all for subscribing either via Twitch Prime or as Tier 1 subscribers on Twitch. I really appreciate it. Ponderosa Pine has added a comment, though. I have a son. He's 10 years old. He has computers. He is so good with these computers. It's unbelievable. The security aspect of cyber is very, very tough, and maybe it's hardly doable, but I will say we're not doing the job we should be doing. But I will say, but that's true throughout our whole governmental society. We have so many things that we have to do better, Lester, and certainly cyber is one of them. Also, thank you to Lux Progressive for the raid earlier. Really appreciate it. That's the show. Folks, please, if you're not already subscribed, please do so. YouTube.com/MattBinder, Twitch.tv/MattBinder. Follow me on social media, like on Twitter or Blue Sky. Just search Matt Binder @MattBinder. And yeah, I'll be on Majority Report tomorrow. I will be on Leftist Mafia tomorrow night. Be sure to tune in if you didn't get enough of me tonight. You get 2 chances on 2 different shows to catch me tomorrow. Who should I rate on Twitch? Let's see who's on right now. Oh, and if you feel so inclined, patreon.com/MattBinder to become a paying subscriber, a paying supporter of the show. Your monthly donation to the Patreon page, patreon.com/MattBinder, helps me grow this show, helps me pay for the services I need to pay for to stream, the equipment I need to pay for, basically gives me the ability to hopefully grow this show and do more streams, more shows, more podcasts, more videos. I'd love to do a lot more, and I can only do so with your support. Patreon.com/MattBinder. Okay, over on Twitch, let's see who's on. We got excuse me. Who's on? Let's see. Oh, Amy EC3 is watching the Sam Cedar Ethan Klein debate too. If you haven't got enough of it here, let's send you to Amy EC3, who is great and who I regularly rate anyway. But it just makes even more sense to rate her today too. Sending you all to Amy EC3's channel if you're watching on Twitch. All right, everyone. See you tomorrow. Majority Report. See you tomorrow on Leftist Mafia. Hope you enjoyed tonight's show and subscribed to youtube.com/MattBinder and twitch.tv/MattBinder. And I will see you all next time on the show. Whoa, whoops. How did that happen? How am I playing that clip? Where was it even saved? Haven't played that clip since the first hour of the show. All right, everyone. Have a good night. See you all real soon.